Good morning, everyone. Morning. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your interest in our fall meeting for our Texas Technology Task Force. Today, we'll be discussing emergency management and recovery through agency partnerships. My name is Rose Guajardo. I'm part of the Strategic Initiatives and Innovations team here at TxDOT, and also the project manager for T3F. A saying that we say here is safety first and innovation always. So with that, we're going to start with our safety briefing.
Attention, please. The following is a safety briefing to help ensure your personal safety while attending a public meeting at the Texas Department of Transportation Stasny Headquarters Auditorium. In case of a medical emergency, please call 911. An automated external defibrillator unit and first aid kits are marked and located in the main lobby at the security desk. Fire extinguishers are marked and located in the hallway. In the event of an evacuation, proceed through the designated hallways to exit the building. Once outside, proceed to the south parking lot of the building, past the flagpole to visitor parking, and assemble at muster point 2. In case of tornado or inclement weather, stay inside. Move away from exterior walls and windows. The designated shelters are interior hallways. In case of active shooter or bomb threat, follow instructions from the public address system and on-site security personnel for more details. Thank you for your time. Have a safe and productive meeting.
All right, and with that, I would ask Darren to come up and he will provide our welcome and introductions.
All right. Thanks for all of y'all here and for those that are online as well. This is Emergency Preparedness Month, I've learned, and appropriately, the intent was then to bring together today the ideas of what is currently out there in terms of technology that supports weather preparedness, but also what might be coming in the future, and to have that discussion and that understanding and to take that back again to your respective organizations. The Tech Task Force is always looking toward the future and thinking about what new technologies may impact transportation as a whole, certainly what may impact TxDOT's mission and what we need to be thinking strategically about there, but also mobility in general and what else the state might do or how they may respond to that emerging technology. So I think certainly in light of the flooding events that happened this summer, knowing those technologies and then thinking about what else can be done in transportation as a whole in the future is certainly a valuable lesson learned as well as opportunity for us to do better. Beyond that, I always like to point out activities department-wide. I think it's up. No, it's not up there. Let's pull that one up. Oh, is it me? I gotcha. The internal research opportunities in the department right now, the National Highway Cooperative Highway Research Program project call is out, and TxDOT is taking input or ideas to that up until the November 3rd, where Kevin will have to make sure they're all submitted from our research division, as well as the Advanced Innovation Management Program, which is much more focused on innovative ideas that have already been accomplished out in the field somewhere in transportation. And the idea is to bring those in and then promote those broadly at a national level, very similar to what we do within TxDOT for state level activities. If you're involved in the research program as a whole, the research project call for this year, well, the next fiscal year has closed. And now we'll begin the process of vetting all the submitted proposal ideas with, in this case, the strategic innovation one being October 30th will be the first meeting to vet those projects. The Innovation Alliance continues as a monthly format. The first meeting will be on October 1st, and that's, I believe, a Wednesday, and it'll be every, I think, first Wednesday or so of the month with an in-person meeting on October 29th. And our next Connected and Autonomous Vehicle Task Force meeting is on December 4th, and I believe we have the Technology Task Force meeting on the same day, so it's a 2-for-1 day for you on December 4th to kind of round out the year. A couple other I thought of while I'm standing here, we have our annual short course, primarily our engineering development, training activity at Texas A&M at TTI, or partner with TTI. That's the first week in November, but a large contingent of TxDOT attends that, and there are several sessions, and there'll certainly be ones on innovation and future technologies at that one. So I encourage those that have not signed up to sign up and go. And the traffic safety and management course or conference is the third week in November. And also that week is the geospatial conference. So a big week in November and a big November as a whole for TxDOT related conferences and specific activities. We may have gone. Last thought that I wanted to pass on is we continue to have an emerging technology assessment program. I said that we had something like the AIM program at the national level. Well, this is it for us. This is a one-stop shop for any vendor that has specifically more of a technology solution. We already have an existing product evaluation program under the research division for highway-specific or transportation-specific widgets and components like that research handles. But for more technology-focused ones, we tend to point these vendors towards this program. So you're welcome to engage through that. And then the program as a whole will reach out to the respective operational division that has responsibility in that area and begin to coordinate their level of interest with that solution or that idea. And then if there's interest in furthering, they'll reach out and they'll coordinate meetings and begin to develop it as an idea. And we'll see where it goes. If it ultimately is very desirable, then we can develop that into a program department-wide and work on the resource requirements and those kind of things. So I encourage you to know about that and some of the requirements there about it being level 6 technology readiness. So it needs to be something pretty much ready to go. We're not doing research with this program. We're trying to implement things in the field. And it needs to have been an established capability for at least 2 years. Certainly meet any cybersecurity and privacy requirements, and as a part of that FedRAMP or TxRAMP certified. Pretty simple, straightforward, and obviously in your technology field, it kind of makes sense. Questions of me? We're really looking forward to the 2 panels today. Really appreciate the people that have come to speak on those panels and share what they know and what they've learned to further all of our activities and to help us grow as a department and as a state transportation community. Who do I hand this off to, Rose? You? Okay.
Thank you, Darren. Hello, everyone. I'm going to provide a quick meeting overview, right? And also just another matter of introduction. Prior to my return to TxDOT, I worked in another state agency, the General Land Office, as part of their communications team for disaster recovery and response following Hurricane Harvey. So disaster response isn't new to me, but not many people realize how Team Texas works together to not only prepare, but respond to disasters to serve our fellow Texans. So I really hope that everyone gets a lot out of these sessions. So for our first session, we will start with an overview of flood response and recovery with the panel drawing on lessons learned and innovations from North Carolina. We will also have a TxDOT research presentation and an overview of our TxDOT flood warning system. We will also take a short break and have a moment to talk about preparedness with our friends at the General Land Office. And then for our second panel, we will talk about partnerships and innovation, which led us to a record-breaking bridge rebuild. And we will receive insights from Texas A&M Task Force 1, and we will learn about drone innovation from our newly formed TxDOT Emerging Aviation Technology section. I look forward to the panels and discussions. Thank you. I should have had that slide up.
Thank you, Rose. Just as we're transitioning here, I'm Alyssa Finley with the Texas A&M Transportation Institute, and I'm going to be leading this first session as the moderator, but we will put up on the slide deck. Whoops, I'm going to go back right here real quick. Just see a minute. The QR code. There are a couple of hard copies of the agendas for the folks to the table, but if you would like the agenda for any reason for documentation, if you want to take a quick moment, you can scan that QR code. You'll be able to keep that for your files. So I'll let you do that before I advance the slide and we get going. Couple more seconds, see some phones out. We can bring that up to later on if you need to. So our first session this morning is going to be about flood forecasting and monitoring. We're going to be looking at systems and technologies that use rainfall and stream data to monitor potential flooding, the impacts on infrastructure, and to provide warnings and alerts that for potentially affected areas. And we have 3 speakers. Our first speaker is Gary Thompson. He is the Deputy Hazard Mitigation Chief and Chief of the North Carolina Geodetic. Oh, I messed that up. I'm sorry. I apologize. Survey of North Carolina Emergency Management. We are pleased to have him joining us virtually all the way from North Carolina, and he's going to talk about their system and tee off our conversation this morning. So, Gary, I'm going to stop sharing and let you bring up your slides for us.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Can you see my slides?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thanks for the opportunity to tell you about our flood warning system here in North Carolina. I'll start out and just give you kind of a brief history of how it was created. Really, it was after we were here, North Carolina was impacted in 1999 by Hurricane Dennis and Floyd. And North Carolina made the decision to create a floodplain mapping program and also a flood warning program. In the floodplain mapping program, we worked with FEMA to become a cooperating technical state and to assume responsibility of creating our own flood maps. And since that time, we have partnered with FEMA, and we have a program here where we develop develop flood maps in partnership with FEMA, and then provide those to FEMA, and they're published on both our web application and also FEMA's web application. Our flood warning program started about the same time. North Carolina, like Texas, is impacted quite often by hurricanes and other flood events. And so the floodplain map, the flood warning program, was developed to help provide information to the public and local officials about flood events. And you can see kind of the history here that we've gone through. What I'm going to show you today is we're on version what we call FIMA 3.0. It's our latest version with things we've learned through the years. After Hurricane Matthew and Florence, we learned a lot, mainly IT, because the system was getting so many users. And so we've made some changes to overcome that. And with our recent events, we've been very successful in being able to provide the information to everyone that accessed the system. So the goals of FIMA is to really provide near real-time information to the public and local officials about flooding where we have gauges. And I'll show you as we get through the information, the public can go in and set up alerts. So if they live near a gauge or area that's impacted where we have information, they can go in and set up alerts for what level of alert they want, from minor flooding to major flooding. We have a vast amount of data that we use. Obviously, with our floodplain mapping program, we've done a lot of engineering studies, so we have a lot of models that we can use. We are just completed our 3rd statewide iteration of LiDAR data collection. So we have a lot of data that we're using in our flood warning system. And all this is to help with decision makers, especially during an event, to help prepare and help recover after an event, to know what areas are flooded, what areas might be impacted where you can't access. So that's the whole goal of that. This really is a partnership. One of our primary partners is North Carolina Department of Transportation. We work very closely with TxDOT. They provide funding to help with funding with our staff. They install gauges. We've worked with them to streamline the process to get permission to install a gauge on a DOT bridge. So it's a great partnership. We also have partners we utilize gauge data from other partners like USGS, NOAA, local governments, and even the private sector. We also have a policy with local governments that if they purchase and install gauges and they request our assistance, we'll take over maintenance of those gauges. So currently, the system, we have 755 gauges that we receive data. And again, those are a combination of our HC-owned gauges that North Carolina Department of Transportation has installed, USGS, NOAA, local governments, and even private sector. And you'll notice the difference between the numbers that we own and what we maintain. Again, that is some that local governments have installed, and we've assumed maintenance on those gauges. We use a variety of ways of communicating or streaming the data to our system. Down the coast, eastern part of North Carolina, we use a NOAA GO satellite for the data. A large number of our gauges, we use cell modems. And then in Western North Carolina, we have our own VH radio network that we use to transmit the data. Pre-made libraries, you'll hear me talk about libraries. These are engineered models that we have developed that allows us to visualize the flooding at every half foot of elevation of water level. So once the gauge provides the water level elevation to our system, then we can pull that library and visualize what is being impacted, the extent of impact, and what buildings are being impacted, and what infrastructures like roads and bridges are impacted. And I'll show you examples of that. And then the web tool. So we're on version 3.0, and we've taken input from our users and added a lot of information to the system. We designed this latest version so that as soon as you go to FEMA, it kind of gives you a quick look of what the situation is. Green is good. That means no flooding. And then you can see on the left the legend as you get up to red and to purple, that indicates major flooding impact. The up and down arrows just means if the water level is rising or falling. And if it's just nothing there, that means the water level is steady. There's a little circle around a gauge. That means that's a forecast site, and that indicates what the forecast is for that gauge. We made some changes on how you can access the system. You can see there's a variety of ways you can sign in. And then we also kind of customize the alerts. So individuals can go in and create custom alerts when they want to be alerted if flooding occurs. We also added where you can go in and really do a lot of sorting to see if you just want to see which gauges are risk rated, which gauges where the water level is rising. You can sort that. You can sort them by who owns the gauges. And then the out of service helps us very quickly see which gauges are offline and where we need to do maintenance, or if we need to contact one of our partners to get that gauge back online. And to save from having to just kind of zoom into your area, you can go in and search by river basin, by county, NCDOT division, or EM area. So it kind of allows you to quickly go to an area and look at the gauges. So this is a standard dashboard for each gauge. This is a riverine gauge. As you can see down at the bottom, it tells you the general information, the current stream stage, has a hydrograph. You can see this is a forecast site because of the dashed lines on the hydrograph, and then forecast and then flow. The next one is a gauge down at the coast. You can see it has a tidal impact. This one has this is one of the new features we've added, history. So if a gauge has been operational during past events, you can see this gauge here. It actually shows you what the peak was during that event, and you can visualize what occurred during that event. This is one of the features that is used a lot. It's called scenario mode. And as you notice, there's a kind of a bar across there. Notice as I raise the elevation of the water, you can see the inundation will change, and we'll show you what's impacted. This is used a lot by emergency management officials to estimate where it's going to be impacted. And as you see, as I raise the water elevation, you'll see a building start to change color, which means they're about to be impacted by flooding. If you noticed on the right, in the box in the right bottom, it also estimates how many buildings are being impacted and the damage that's occurring. And then if you click on that box, it will give you more detailed information about which buildings, how much water is in them, and how much they've been impacted. As I said, we have partnered with DOT, and our North Carolina Department of Transportation had created a version of FIMA called FIMA T, which was transportation impacted. So this latest version, we have merged those two together. And so not only do you have building impacts, but also road and bridge impacts. And you can see from this screenshot, you can see which roads are impacted and by the extent of how much they're impacted. And also the bridges. You can see one bridge in red, which has been heavily impacted by flooding, and one in green. This is just some from Helena. This is up in western North Carolina, just to show you the major impacts along the French Broad River. And you can see all the buildings. The purple means major flooding in those buildings. And this is just to show you that the level of flooding at that gauge was almost 25 feet. And if you click on the history at that gauge, you can see that the flooding the record at that site was 23.1 feet. So almost 2 foot higher than the flood of record at that location. And then if you click on the building impacts at that level, you can see 178 buildings and almost $49 million worth of damage. You can also create reports for every gauge. This is a report for that gauge. You can also use scenarios. So if you want to see what the potential impact is of the gauge, you can use the scenario mode, and it will produce a report to show you, to simulate what the impact would be at that water level elevation. These are all the other reports you can do. These are used a lot during events where you want a full report of all the gauges. You can produce it from here. For our advanced users, you can see all the different, as far as rainfall, we have brought that information in. We can visualize that so that local officials, state officials can use this to see how much rain is occurring or will plans to be occurring. So notice we have building footprints on there, so we have to keep that up to date. And so we're currently in the refresh mode to update our building footprint database so that the data is very accurate and up to date. We also have our Adopt a Gauge program that local officials can adopt a gauge and help us keep an eye on the gauge. Well, these are just a picture of some of our latest gauges, newest gauges we just installed. And one of our big problems right now is vandalism and theft. You can see this gauge here on the left, and then on the right, somebody just took a Sawzall and just took the whole gauge. And that's where our Adopt a Gauge helps us out to help keep an eye on the gauges so that they won't be damaged or stolen. We also do a lot of quality control. After an event, we collect a large number of high water marks near where we have these libraries to do quality control. You can see the picture on the right there, where we surveyed where the actual high water mark was. And then the picture up in the right is the model or the library, that water elevation. You can see that real world matched the model. And so that's what we're constantly checking to make sure all the models are accurate and up to date. Just an example, after Helena, we did a lot of high water mark data collection. This is just one example. This was done in conjunction with the Army Corps of Engineers, North Carolina Department of Transportation, and our survey staff. And you can see we collected over 2,000 high water marks in Western North Carolina after this event to be used to do quality control on our FIMA libraries and also to be used in our remapping of our floodplains, because we will have to take a look and see where changes occurred and see where we need to change our maps. And with that, there's my contact information. Feel free to contact me. And with that, I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Thank you so much. We are going to move on to our next speaker. I am failed to mention we are going to hold all questions until after all three presenters have made their presentations. Let me switch back over to our slideshow. All right, next up is Dr. David Maidment. He is the Hussein M. Al-Harthi Centennial Chair in the Civil Engineering Emeritus at the University of Texas in Austin. He is a specialist in surface water hydrology, and in particular in the application of geographic information systems to hydrology, and we welcome you today.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to share our research with you, and I'd like to introduce my project manager, Rosemary Klee.
Thanks so much, Dr. Maidment. I will not take too much time. I'm a little surprised introductory speaker. I'm really delighted and honored to get to be the project champion for this project, which is an amazing effort that we've been embarking on for quite some time. And it's great to actually follow North Carolina with the Feynman Project, because we've drawn inspiration from them and so many others that have led the way with this. So you'll hear a lot of the recurring themes for this. And it really is a lot about partnerships as well. So our group, I'm the state hydraulics engineer for TxDOT. We don't really get involved with emergency management, but we know that these are not constant but recurring events, and it's really we're in this moment of being reminded about how important this work is. So we have been acting as the project champion really to serve our emergency management team and the entire state. And we're at this very exciting moment right now where we're about to in this research project, have our emergency management start testing the tool itself. And you got to hear a lot of the details from North Carolina on how it works. They have a lot of partnerships. They have different entities that are involved, who's in the lead, who's participating, who runs gauges,
Seminars.
who
I
funds
figured I could do
gauges.
this.
And so I also want to note that like those are some of the questions that
I guess is
we're
we gotta
still
get rid of it, but I don't know.
Sorry, somebody's not muted that's online. If you could please make sure and mute your mics, we would gladly appreciate that. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. So those are some of the questions that we're still also working out, but we're really fortunate to have Dr. Maidment with his many, many relationships and deep roots in the community, really getting to figure out how to partner and how do we find our path forward, because we know that this project is really important. The other things that you heard about, these recurring themes around like, so how do we refresh the data? That is required periodically. So those are just some of the questions that we still need to resolve. Dr. Maidment only has a few minutes to tell you about this project. It's going to take way longer to really understand it than the time we have. So I want to just turn this over to him. If you have any more questions, we're totally available to give you more details, because there are a lot of different amazing dimensions to the technical work that's been done to get us to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. It's a privilege to work with Rosemary and with TxDOT on this exciting research. So I want to start with a national perspective. There was established in 2014 a national water center in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And that, you may say, why Tuscaloosa, Alabama? It's the hometown of Senator Richard Shelby of Alabama, and he wanted to have federal activity in his hometown. And it was designed so that there would be a national system for flood forecasting rather than regional systems, which had been and continue to be functioning up to this point. I participated in the opening meeting of this center and proposed a collaboration between the academic community and the federal government, in particular the National Weather Service, in building what came to be called the National Water Model. And the prototype for that was built here in Austin in 2014 and 15, and it now runs across the country. It forecasts flow on 190,000 miles of streams and rivers in Texas, and it's continuously operating. So there's 4 different versions of this. In a simulation model, it says what's going on now, a short-range forecast that's 18 hours ahead, a medium-range forecast that's 10 days ahead, and a long-range forecast that's 30 days ahead. So it took a couple of years to get the prototype working and implemented, and it's been successfully updated a number of times since. We started working with TxDOT, and one of the key things in trying to understand how the National Water Model would be applied in Texas is the elevation of the road and bridge system. So we have built a road elevation model for the state. That's 470,000 miles of roads. It covers, we've got isolated the LiDAR data for those. It's 39 billion LiDAR points, 83,000 points per mile on average. And we've produced digital surface models, which are shown on the right-hand side picture for all the maintenance sections and all the TxDOT districts across Texas. This is a big lift, as you can imagine. So let me tell you a little bit about what's going on here. So this is a road elevation model for Travis County. You can see lots of LiDAR points there going across the Colorado River. In this case, we've been able to take the OpenStreetMap lines and then lay them along and buffer the OpenStreetMap lines by a particular distance, 8 meters for connector roads and 5 meters for residential streets, and then isolate the LiDAR data that are on those roads. And this is the first time that the road and bridge system of Texas has ever been represented in 3 dimensions. And you can imagine how critical knowing what the Z-value is if you're going to model flooding in our state. The flood assessment system for TxDOT, or FAST, which is just illustrated here, is the system that Rosemary referred to, which is now operating statewide. It has 3 overlaid maps: flood inundation, flooded roads, and flooded bridges. So this is an example actually for Mustang Creek, which is located near Taylor. And these maps are available now for each district and for the whole state, for TxDOT statewide. The forecasting is updated hourly, and it's for 18 hours ahead. And I've indicated some of my colleagues here who work on this with me. Another thing that our system does is provide bridge warnings. And so what we do is take the time series of the forecast over the next 18 hours and assess what will be the impact on the bridge system. We've calculated the cross-sectional stream elevation and the bridge deck elevation, the local elevation for about 12,000 bridges. And this is an example of where a bridge was actually flooded. The U.S. Geological Survey went out to verify that the forecast from the system was actually correct. So what we have done is that this system runs in real time across the state. It is a research level system that's just starting to be evaluated by the maintenance division at TxDOT. Our project champion is Rosemary Clee, that you heard from a few minutes ago. 25 TxDOT districts, 269 maintenance sections. I was looking at the Amarillo district recently, and I realized it was larger than the state of Massachusetts. Yeah, so that gives you a sense of what it takes to build a statewide database in Texas. 25 Massachusetts. There's flood inundation mapping for 190,000 stream miles. It's continuous along the whole stream system. The OpenStreetMap roads have been put into XYZ, 470,000 miles for the first time. And then we've got the bridge warnings as well. This is powered by a system called KISSERS. It's a large-scale data management firm that does water data management and other kinds of data management. And the whole system is based in the Amazon cloud. So here we've got a whole forecasting system operation. We went over to TxDOT in 2016 and said, hey guys, we got 550 USGS gauges and we have 25,000 TxDOT bridges. We need to start doing a bit more measurement than just what we have up to this point if we're going to do all this forecasting. And so TxDOT took a look at the situation, and so we've got USGS gauges are the gold standard. They measure everything all the time, and local entities have water level gauges, cities and counties, for example. There's one, at that time we had one gauge for every 185 streams that we were forecasting. And what TxDOT decided to do was to measure water level and surface velocity. And that turned out to be a really prescient decision. In other words, what TxDOT has supported is a observation network that's higher in quality than what a local entity would have, because it measures velocity and level both, but doesn't cost as much as what a full scale USGS gauge does. And this is where we have our gauges located. The red and orange dots represent gauges installed in this TxDOT radar network. There's 80 gauges here. These are our partners from the USGS who do this. The gauges are powered by solar and they communicate via cell phone. And we have each gauge measures down to the water surface, and also it measures the velocity by a Doppler effect. The blue dots are USGS gauges, and we've approximately doubled the gauge density in the areas where we've installed these gauges. So the principle of this is that the sensor is a radar gauge that measures down to the surface, and it also measures the velocity by a velocimetry Doppler effect. And we find that the velocity and the water surface elevation don't march up and down and with each other. There's pretty often a spike at the beginning where the velocity goes up, and then it can drop down during the time that the flood's operating, and then it goes up again. We checked the calibration of the gauges by using acoustic Doppler current profiler measurements across the stream that measure the velocity across the cross-section, and with that we can take the ratio of the surface velocity where it's measured to the average velocity in the cross-section, multiply that by the cross-sectional area, and you get the velocity, the discharge straight out of the device. We had a gauge installed on the Guadalupe River at Comfort. This is our westernmost gauge, and this is the area where the terrible flooding happened in July. The Camp Mystic is shown there with the purple star, purple square. And this particular gauge is one of these radar gauges, and it recorded a really impressive velocity spike. So the yellow lines there show that at 8 o'clock, the velocity was 1.64 feet per second. At 8:05, it was 1.56 feet per second. At 8:10, it was 14 feet a second. Wow, 7 times higher in 5 minutes. And then the peak of the flood occurred 1.5 hours later. The legislature, Senate and House, had a hearing in Kerrville, and I was asked to testify to the hearing. And I talked, one of the senators, Senator Flores, said, this is a monster. And I said, Senator, the monster sent a signal. He said, I'm coming. So this was a critical piece of information. Unfortunately, it wasn't recorded until 8 o'clock in the morning, and the water went through the camp at 4 o'clock in the morning. But our legislature has just appropriated $50 million for gauges and sirens. And you can see if this system was set up at the camp and the siren were connected to the velocity spike, okay, velocity spike happens, the siren goes off, there's your warning system right there. So this is an important piece of information. This network is the largest network of radar gauges in the country, and in terms of resilience of our state following the disaster that we've had in Kerrville, this could be a pretty critical piece of information that TxDOT has built up the experience in using this kind of gauge in our state. One of the things that we've done also is to take the data from gauges and the data from forecasting and combine them together so that we can get an adjusted forecast that allows for what the National Water Model puts out, but changes it according to what the local gauges are. And these are the professor and grad student who've worked on that. And what we've been able to demonstrate is that this system adjusts the flow coming into the gauges so that it matches what is measured there. And that's a much more effective system than what the national system is, which just adjusts the flow downstream of all gauges. So the left-hand side is what the national system is doing. The right-hand side is what our system is doing. So the flood inundation mapping for Texas is based on a concept called the height above nearest drainage, or HAND. And so when the water depth is quite small and the height above nearest drainage is large, that means what's the difference between the height of the location you're interested in and the height of the bottom of the creek. Then if your flood is greater than HAND, then you get flooded, unfortunately. And so we built the first version of HAND for the country in 2016. So the left-hand side is an elevation model, topographic elevation above geodetic datum, and the right-hand side is how high is the land surface above the bottom of the nearest creek. It's called a relative elevation model. We worked on this with Jan Liu, who's now at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So the National Weather Service has decided to scale this concept out to the whole country. The colours here represent the deployment of mapping in successive years. The green, which covered part of Texas, was done in 23. The orange, which covers the rest of Texas, was completed in September. The whole country is going to be covered by September of next year. So this is called FIM6, the same basic idea as HAND, but now deployed across the state and, most importantly for us, deployed across Texas. So what the federal government does is that they provide 2 forecasts which deal with the maximum that occurs over the next 5 days from the medium range weather forecast for the National Water Model. And they have also a map of what is going on now, what's the current inundation. And what our system does is that it tells what is going to be the near-term forecast for the next 18 hours, the short-range forecast, and it also assesses road and bridge impacts. This is the first time there's been a system like that. So we're sort of the sandwich in the middle of the sandwich here. So we also conduct large-scale flood emergency response exercises. I see Omar De Leon is on the panel, the second panel that I'll meet this morning. This was the exercise with the Austin district. This is my colleague Harry Evans, who is conducting that here at Stastny. So we really enjoy working with the maintenance staff and getting feedback from them. So let me just finish then with a summary. There's a long and proud tradition of using hydrology and hydraulics for design here at TxDOT. I wrote a textbook on hydrology quite a few years ago, and I used even some material out of the hydraulic manual. H&H for hydraulic design means flood conveyance and storage. The focus is on flood mitigation. There's a small area, road or bridge system, and it's a static design storm based on historical statistics. What's emerging here is a new discipline I'm calling H&H for real-time flood engineering, which means how does the H&H discipline apply to support maintenance, not just design? So this is used for emergency response during real-time flood events. The focus is on preparedness and response. There's a broad area focus for the state, and this dynamic storms is always changing. I was over at the Texas Division of Emergency Management a while ago, and I said, as an engineer, I worry if I am wrong. And the first responder said, I worry if I am late. Yeah, that's the critical thing that differentiates what goes on in emergency response to what goes on in design. You cannot be late. And so we want to focus on making our system as speedy as possible, and we'd look forward to working with the rainfall data that's going to be talked about in the next presentation if possible. Thank you.
All right, our last speaker for this beginning session is Robin Osborne. He is the traffic technology architect at TxDOT. He joined the new traffic technology team in 2022, where he supports transportation engineers in implementing a variety of modern tools and solutions.
Hi, good morning. I'd like to talk to you today about what we are currently doing with flood alerting for our districts. And so we'll walk a little bit through the origin story, how we got to this point, what we're thinking about. And I think this fits in really nicely with the previous presentations I've just seen. So our origin story is Hurricane Harvey. Back in 2017, there was over 50 inches of rainfall in 4 days, obviously a massive event. And so you can see some of the pictures there and the storm that just parked over Texas, Houston specifically. And so this was the spur for what exactly the Houston district wanted to accomplish. So what did they say? We have good info about what our cameras are showing on the roadways, but we have roadways that don't have camera coverage, and we have some rainfall data, but what is that impacting? We need to put all this stuff together. Okay. And so they tried to define a solution. They wanted to warn travelers to use caution and avoid areas where flooding was likely to be caused on the roadway. So that was the idea that came out of Hurricane Harvey. So this is the concept that they came up with. Okay, so there are existing flood sensors out there. They are in our area. Let's partner with those agencies. They have rainfall rates and stream elevations, so let's get that. We're going to push it into this thing we're calling the flood warning system, and we're going to output it to a number of different places there. I'm going to minimize the thing you guys can't see, but it was blocking my view. So we're going to push it to Houston TransStar website. They also have a mobile app that will be helpful for people to be able to access this data. And then, of course, how can we also share this with any regional partners that we have? So this is the initial concept that they came up with. So an overview of what Houston came up with is there are existing field sensors, as you've seen, and so they are collecting this data. They are sending it back to their sensor owning agencies, right? So that is things like the Harris County Flood Control District, right? They have field sensors. They're collecting this data. Let's get it to display on our websites, right? So TTI, who was the one that implemented this for us, they made it such that the TransStar website is their version of Drive Texas. So Houston has their own sort of traveler information website that they use. So let's push it to that website in the mobile app. And so what are we getting out of that? We're getting accurate and timely rainfall data from well-maintained field devices that are maintained by other agencies. So I think one of the key themes that you'll see of what we're trying to do here is that we are not investing in a ton of infrastructure. We're going out and seeing what infrastructure is already out there that we can utilize. And so there's a rainfall sensors across the state, and so we're going to start getting those and ingesting that data. So Houston was the first district to receive this system. And following that, we expanded to Yoakum, Corpus, and Pharr, and then Beaumont, of course. So that is the 5 coastal districts. Those were determined to be the highest priority, of course, given the highest threat of hurricane exposure there in the Gulf. So you can see in Beaumont, they partnered with a drainage district, Jefferson County Drainage District. There's also a river authority, a university in there. And so you'll sort of see some of the different partner agencies that we're working with to get some of this data. And so as we expanded across the coast, we work with each district to see what partners do you have in your district and what data do they have that we can ingest. So like I said, these are some of the data sources that we're working with. River authorities, I think, are some of our biggest partners. They have a lot of sensors out there. There's also universities, colleges, counties, drainage districts, research institutes, and we even heard about a private energy partner that is starting to collect information and is possibly able to share it with us as well. So it's not just on the public side, it's extending to the private side as well. USGS, of course, HADS, and then the NOAA radar data. And I want to call this one out because so far all we've talked about is using physical sensors in the field and ingesting their data. But those aren't fully spread across the state in every location we want. So that NOAA radar data is going to come in a second. And I'll talk about that. It's a virtual sensor, is what we're calling it. On the right there, you can see the quantity of sensors that we're currently ingesting from each of the partners. So this is the current version of what the TxDOT flood warning system looks like. On the bottom left, we'll start there. There are the existing sensors that other agencies are owning and maintaining for us. And then, of course, the data from those is shared up to that field sensor managing agency. And then the other cloud object there is the virtual sensors. That's that NOAA radar data. Okay, so we're using both physical sensors and the virtual information to create these virtual sensors. And those have been very helpful in filling in gaps where we currently don't have sensors. And so we've been, some districts are relying on that more than others, but whether you use it a lot or a little, it's very valuable data to be able to kind of supplement the existing field sensor data. So all that is ingested into what we're calling the flood warning system. You have a couple modules in there like notifications, a data feed, historical data. We're storing everything we're pulling in. And what do we output from this flood warning system? First thing is real-time alerts. You can see the email icon and the text message icon. And so TxDOT users, we're currently limiting the system to TxDOT users, but that could obviously change in the future. But maintenance personnel, traffic management center personnel, anyone that's interested in where they should be focusing their efforts on flood events, they can sign up for these alerts, and those alerts can be customized, to their needs. The other place we're outputting this data is to real-time maps. Started at the HoustonTransStar.org website, but we've also integrated that data with Drive Texas. That's the statewide website for traveler information. And then you can see sort of the grayed out line to Lone Star there. Lone Star is our advanced traffic management system for ITS infrastructure. That's a lot of what the districts use. And so we'll be integrating this data directly into Lone Star so that the people that are doing 24/7 real-time traffic management are able to also get that that information directly in the system they are already working in. We think there's going to be a lot of value with that integration. So this is showing the initial deployment. The left side is HoustonTranstar.org. You can see the radar overlaid onto the map there. And then they've also got the little notifications you can see popping up. That's where the flooding is occurring. And then the right side is Drive Texas. That's the data is being mirrored there. So of course, we're validating, making sure that the systems are showing the same thing. But that's what they look like on the different websites. So what are the benefits? We are providing location-based flood warning, obvious. There's a different radius we're using for different sensor types and everything. We're also providing focused information to maintenance crews during weather events. And I think this is really the headline of the entire presentation in my mind right here. The data for an entire district can be integrated into our system for the same cost of deploying one single sensor. So think about that. Instead of TxDOT spending their money on the infrastructure to go out and build sensors, we're going out and using both virtual sensors through that NOAA radar data and partnering with agencies that have already decided to deploy the infrastructure and maintain it. So for the cost of one of those devices, we're implementing for an entire district. We think there's a lot of value in that. So what are our accomplishments so far? We've integrated those quantities right there, as you can see, for the 5 coastal districts, Houston, Beaumont, Yoakum, Corpus, and FAR. We've also integrated the information into not only HoustonTranstar.org, but DriveTexas.org. We've also developed the system notifications that I talked about. You can see an example of an email on the right there. It lists the 15-minute rainfall rate with a timestamp. It also gives the last hour and the last 6 hours because we think that contextual information is important. And this is a relatively new feature for us. And so it's simple, but we think it's effective. It's sort of the low-hanging fruit right now. I think we have a lot of opportunity to add even more context to this type of alert. And so users that sign up can receive that type of alert either via email or text. And they can configure it, like I said, they can either do it by county, they can do it by district. If they wanted to know the whole district, they can do it individually by sensor. So they can really customize it by location or time of day, day of the week, things like that. Another plan we have is, like I mentioned, this system was conceived in Houston, right? And so it was built on their local servers at the Houston TransStar facility. And as we expand and outgrow that single district, we're looking to migrate it to the cloud. So we'll be doing that over the next fiscal year. And that obviously provides a number of benefits, as you can sort of see there. We're expecting better uptime, better enablement of features that come with cloud services these days. Obviously, things like AI and data analytics can be implemented much more easily for systems that are in the cloud. And then, of course, as we expand across the state, the expansion alone is well worth going to the cloud. So this is another major effort that we're working on. This is a graph showing the number of notifications that came through with a few labels applied to them. So remember, we're only across the coastal districts right now. But as you can see there on the left, you have 2 major rainfall events over the last year, and you can see the spike in notifications that comes with each of those. And then there's been a little more rainfall this last summer, which is the right side of the graph there. I want to note that the summer floods happening predominantly in the San Antonio and Central Texas districts. That's not going to be captured in this graph here. This is a video. I want to tee it up real quick. So you're going to see the radar coming in over the map here, and you'll see our flood alerts pop up, and I believe the little blue map icons with the little radius around them. Okay, so that's our system working as intended. The other little icons that you'll see pop up are Houston Fire Department high water rescue calls. So this is a recent event from August 31st, actually, of this year. And what you're going to see, and I'll click play now. I don't know if it needs to load or not, but let's see. What you're going to see is that we are overlapping very nicely with the places that they're actually receiving calls from citizens. Hey, I'm in trouble. I'm in high water. I need to be rescued. And so this was a really great study for us to kind of see how effective is our system. Great, we're seeing little icons pop up on a map, but what does that mean? I'll advance the slide here, so we have to look at that. So here's some stats associated with that event. Okay, the 44 of the 45 alerts that came in from the Houston Fire Department were within our roadway flood warning alert radius. And the only one that didn't show up in that is because the sensor in that location was actually malfunctioning at the time. So we feel really good about where our data was overlapping with Houston's there. Our alerts were on average created about 15 to 45 minutes before the Houston Fire Department calls came in. That's a great heads up for our maintenance and first responding crews for that versus the Houston Fire Department calls. And then we also looked at the rainfall rates, the 15-minute rainfall totals for those rescues, and the current thresholds that we're using for a lot of our data are in line with what we were seeing with where they were happening. So with that, I'll go over some of our next steps. We are currently live on the coastal districts. Our next steps are what we're calling the coastal adjacent districts. That is Laredo, San Antonio, Austin, Bryan, Lufkin, and San Angelo has also showed a lot of interest. They're a little closer to the center, but they've identified funding and a strong interest to implement the system as well. So we're going to include them. Like I mentioned, we're going to migrate from the TrainStar.org to the TxDOT cloud. Well, not the TxDOT cloud, but a cloud. We're going to integrate with Lone Star to get that information directly into the system where a lot of our TxDOT personnel are already using. And we're going to be adding a lot of feature and historical data enhancements. We see a lot of opportunities there as we kind of grow the system, get feedback from users and things like that on what we can add. And then we're looking to be statewide by the end of fiscal year 29. So we're looking at about 5 districts a year at this point. There's a lot of work implementing with each district. And so we're thinking 5 a year is a reasonable pace, and hopefully we'll be statewide in a few years here. And with that, I've included a few links so you can see the coverage map for yourself, and that's it. Thank you.
All right, if I can invite my 2 speakers are here present in person. If y'all want to come sit at the table and I can give you a mic, we're going to open up some Q&A time, and then Gary is still online as well. I'll give you all a mic to share. And then Julie, if you will come. We're going to open up the questions first of all to the task force members here at the table. So if anyone at the table has a question, Julie can bring you a mic. Yeah.
So appreciate the interesting presentations. And my question more is from the forecasting side. I see how you're moving technology and how Houston's overlaying the radars, but I live in Central Texas, I live north of San Antonio, and anytime they predict rain, they say flooding's possible. Well, at some point, you ignore that, right? I mean, that's the reality of probably what happened in the hill country. So can you talk to us about any efforts you're making in tying into forecasting models and trying to, not give you a day's notice, but can you get to that hour or 2-hour notice of a higher degree of certainty with your systems?
Yes, let me respond to that. So the flood assessment system for TxDOT is tied to the National Weather Service forecasting. So it's constantly running. The short range forecast is updated hourly. So the a limitation for us now is that there's a 2-hour latency between the time the forecast is issued and the time the data are made public. So we've got a gap there. So no matter how fast we are, we've got 2 hours gap that we have to overcome. And what we looked at the San Antonio flooding, for example, in Bardell Creek, and some of the forecasts in the previous evening, that flooding happened at about 3 or 4 in the morning. The 6 p.m. forecast and the 9 p.m. forecast were high enough to put water on the access road of Loop 410, so there was some advance notice, but some of the other forecasts were lower. So one of the things that we're doing this year is to make a lagged ensemble forecast so that we can take the forecast for several hours in the past and overlap them so that we get a sort of a range of what can be expected and not just a single value, which is what we're doing now. The other thing that we want to do is to collaborate with Robin and his team and incorporate rainfall into the forecast as well. So on the Bardell Creek flooding and in the Kerrville situation, if we'd had rainfall, we could have accelerated. We could have shut down or closed that 2-hour gap and cycled faster than what the national pacing through the national system would allow. And so that's what an improvement that we hope we could do this year, and we'd be happy to collaborate with your program, Robin. And it would be the data assimilation scheme that I described is currently working only with surface flow data now, but we want to make it work with rainfall data as well.
I would say from our side, we have definitely considered looking at the forecasting side of it. Right now, we're only responding to where sensors are passing a certain threshold and then alerting, hey, this location likely has flooding. One thing we have heard, especially with massive storm events, is that there are so many alerts that you don't really know where to look. I mean, I think that's just part of what comes with a massive flooding event. You do have locations that are just flooded everywhere. So there's a couple different things as well. We have users that are TxDOT users. They're actually, and in partnership with first responders, they're actually doing the work to respond to those events as they're alerted. Then there's the messaging to the public. I think when it comes to those big events where, especially with forecasting where there's uncertainty, being careful with how we message that is something that we're strongly considering. We don't want to be giving too much, right? Because people start ignoring alerts. On the TxDOT side, we were trying to get accurate, timely, quick information so they can focus their efforts. If you're a district the size of Houston, the amount of roadway that you're needing to kind of scan with your cameras and things like that is overwhelming. But if we can focus your efforts on where to look, where to dispatch maintenance crews, things like that, that's the lowest hanging fruit that we see. And that's why we've implemented that first. And I think the forecasting side is just going to take a little while to kind of get our hands around for those two different audiences. But it's definitely something we're looking at.
And then Gary from North Carolina, did you have any information from your teams on the forecasting question?
Yeah, so we, like David, we bring in the National Weather Service forecast. And so some of our gauge sites are forecast sites. And so we display that information on both the main screen and on the hydrographs. So that is available where we do not do any forecasting on our own. We do bring in the National Weather Service. We also have we have rain gauges, not at all our gauge sites, but at some, and all that rain gauge data is shared with the National Weather Service to help them with their forecast information.
Thank you. Another question.
Yeah, you have a follow on then to those because I want to clarify. So, Robin, I want to make sure I understand. Our focus is on the road system itself. It's either bridges or it's low water areas because we're about mobility, and so that's where we're placing those sensors. We're not really placing sensors as in the example that we're worried about, but you could apply it to Asheville, a neighborhood. That's fair to say, correct?
Yes, that is correct. On system roadways, yes.
And we haven't reached a point where we have been able to deploy anywhere beyond those point locations. We haven't been able to deploy upstream of any significant distance to capture something that might be coming. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the physical sensors, we're relying on where the partner agencies have decided to deploy them. We're restricted to that. The virtual sensors that we can place, those are point sensors. We cannot take, let's say, like an entire roadway segment and pick that. We do apply a radius to each point that we choose. And we sort of focus on helping the district make decisions on where they want to deploy those. So if they have one district actually in a really smart way used their inventory of low water crossing signs to decide where to put these virtual sensors. That it made a lot of sense to us. So we can put them wherever we want to, but yes, we are focused on system roadways. And I think for upstream of events where that upstream flow would impact a bridge or things like that, that's where we'd need sensor help to kind of bring the two together.
So yeah, you led me to my point. So even to have a early warning system just for the road network, in our case, just for our part of the road network, we would have to have upstream sensors in many locations, and we would have to be tied into real-time inundation that's telling us the rate and the total volume that's falling. Because I love what the doctor said about an early warning is the flow rate, but flow rate is just telling us it's speeding up. It's not telling us where the volume is and where it's going to go. We have to capture that at the moment it's falling. We don't really have those ties yet. Is that fair?
What the FAST system does is it forecasts the maximum elevation of any hour during the next 18 hours. And so there are 3 maps that are shown. One is the extent of inundation, one is the length of the road flooded, and the third is if the bridge is impacted or not. And that's a sliding scale depending upon whether the water's nearing the low quarter or is actually impacting the low quarter of the bridge. And so each hour of that forecast is being updated all across the state.
It's telling me that at the point of measurement. It's not telling me that 10 miles upstream where the volume's starting to occur. Because even in your example, it was 4 hours later that the volume came. And
it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's the whole state, upstream and everywhere. So in other words, what we have succeeded in doing is figuring out how, if the current flow is occurring and the forecasts are coming in, what the water is near that has to get down to the gauge. And so that's why the chart I showed for the San Antonio and Guadalupe River basins had a lot more color on the right-hand side, because our adjustment system is allowing for upstream adjustments as well as downstream adjustments of gauges.
Any questions from the audience?
Good morning. I want to know, are y'all working on a damage assessment tool with this data? Just to estimate, based on the flow and some of the data that y'all were talking about, are there any bridges washed out? And Gary Thompson alluded to, he had a sliding scale that when it showed the inundation, it also showed the damage and the cost of the damage to the buildings. Are y'all working on that for any of the roadways?
No, I'm sorry, just to get the hydrology and hydraulics done in real time for Texas, that's all we could manage.
Anyone else from the audience?
So Robin, in your presentation, you mentioned that districts have identified funding, those that are kind of in central Texas or around the coastal area. Is funding the biggest problem for the districts in implementing this? Obviously, with renewed conversation at the legislature, ongoing conversations, is that it, or is it the accessibility to the data, or what is the biggest hindrance in full statewide deployment?
So the way we currently have it structured is that ITD, which is what I'm part of, is supporting the system, the back end, the maintenance, the time that the vendor does enhancements, all of those types of things, the cloud hosting, storage, all that stuff. As we go to each district, we say, hey, look at this really, low cost, high benefit system. It's not that much money. Can you work with us to fund the deployment? And the cost we estimate for big districts is about right. For little districts, is often very little. So yes, funding is sort of the first step that we've identified, and that's the structure we've had since it started expanding outside of Houston. I would also say that there's a lot of components to how we implement with some of these data providers that we're going to work with. Some of them have stream elevation or rainfall rates on a daily basis. That's not real-time enough data for us to consume and then produce alerts that are going to be beneficial to TxDOT maintenance users and transportation management personnel. So we try to work with them to get at minimum 15-minute rainfall rates. So some of them have had to adjust the way they share that. They see us as a good partner. So they've adjusted the way they're capturing, storing, sharing data, things like that. A lot of times they're also posting it in maybe just to a website and it's not consumable. So we need to work with them to get them share the data through a feed instead of just having it posted somewhere. So I honestly, getting in touch with the right person is often a challenge. Then getting the data in the format we need, doing it securely through TxDOT's focus on security posture and everything like that. As far as the virtual sensors, those are not hard to set up. It's just a little bit of time for our TTI point of contact to go through and configure them on the map. So we see the virtual sensors as a good way to get districts to get their foot in the door. And then as we're working with those other data providers, we can, it's going to take some time. But that's really the reason we're not just jumping into a statewide effort in 1 year. We're looking to do 5 a year.
Yeah, so great presentations all. The first question is, how do you perform QA/QC based on these sensors that are offline? So it seems like you have a point source kind of view of where that hits the Houston roads in particular. From that example you showed, how do you kind of adjust that in real time? Is that on TTI or how does that work as far as like that goes?
So we do a couple things. One, we can put virtual sensors over existing field sensors and compare the data that way. That's one way we've worked to develop thresholds for the virtuals and where we should be putting the threshold for alerting. The other thing is we have applied thresholds to the data we're receiving from partners, and that's to catch things like, null or zero values, and we know there should be rain there. And then on the other side, we've seen some come in at 10 inches an hour and things like that. So, and we say, okay, that's obviously malfunctioning as well. So I don't know the exact thresholds that are that TTI has put on those, but we do apply those to check for reasonability on the data we're receiving from the data partners.
And David, do you have anything about any of the QA/QC you do with your system?
Yes, QA/QC is a very important aspect of data ingestion, and our partner, TxDOT, is a very large-scale global data provider and has standardized QA/QC procedures for checking data as it comes in so that it satisfies sanity checks on what the levels are. Because we're using the data for adjusting the forecast, we always have the forecast regardless of whether the data comes or not. So there's there will always be a signal, so to speak.
Right. And then Gary, did you have any comments about how, I know you mentioned in your presentation, y'all go out and y'all measure the high water marks and stuff to look at. Did you have anything else that y'all do from a QA/QC perspective?
Yeah, so when our gauge maintenance technicians go out to work on the gauge, they're equipped with GNSS survey grade receivers. They use a real-time network, and they'll collect water level, elevation of the water, and we'll compare that with the gauge information. So we're constantly checking that. We also are monitoring the gauges for noise, and we'll turn it off, especially during an event. We'll turn a gauge off if we start seeing it spike, so that it doesn't start sending out alerts that are not correct.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other hands in the room, so we have a few. Oh, we have one over here. Okay, we'll do that, and then we do have some online, and we do have a few minutes still, so we'll try to get to a couple of those that are online as well.
Yeah, I had Brad Trutz, TTI. I had a question. I know, Gary, you mentioned you're using a cloud service provider. I know UT Austin's using cloud service, and you're talking about switching to cloud service, but that comes with an escalating cost. So how do you see that figuring in moving forward as you start to accumulate more and more data over time, affecting your budget and everything that comes with cloud-based services?
Yeah, it's a good question. It comes with a cost, but it also comes with a strong benefit, a lot more resiliency in the system. Obviously, it's going to have a better uptime and a lot of those features that we talked about that you can just enable that come with cloud service providers these days. We looked at a number of cloud options when we talked about where to migrate, and we ended up going with TTI's Azure instance. They were able to quote us lower than even TxDOT having it in-house. Especially with the number of interconnections we make with partner agencies to receive their data in varying formats and all the complexities that come with that. It made a lot more sense for us to keep that sort of off of our responsibility. It's an escalating cost. We did have to go and get this approved because it's going to increase the cost big time as we expand. But I think especially, I mean, all the way up to the legislature level, we're seeing strong advocacy for this type of system. So we built it into our budget already, but with the events of this summer, it's kind of aligning with what we were planning on doing anyway. So it'll come with an escalation of cost, but I think the benefit is far outweighing the cost. Without putting exact numbers on it, we're spending a couple of hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next couple years to implement the system across the state. And as you can tell, that is going to come back in manyfold when it comes to saving lives, preventing people from entering into dangerous situations and things like that. So we think it's very high value for the cost that we're investing into the system.
All right, question from online.
Yes. If a district has plans to install a flood detection system for a waterway, how would they coordinate with FAST or other state agencies for the field hardware that is consistent with the larger program?
For our project, we should contact Rosemary Clee, the Director of Hydrology and Hydraulics.
Oh, perfect. Lovely. The follow-up question was, does it matter what equipment is installed, for example, High Sierra or similar manufacturers? Same answer?
We need a discussion about that, because what we've done up to this point is deploy a particular kind of gauge as sort of a technology demonstration, and how to involve a heterogeneous network of gauges of different kinds is something that we haven't really contemplated up to this point.
Great. We have another.
Can I add real quickly to that?
Yeah.
I'm really glad this question came up. If you are installing a TxDOT device with a TxDOT communication device, which is a cell modem usually, and that's coming back over the TxDOT network, great. No problems there. We do that all the time. If we're looking to vendors to provide the communication, especially the network piece, a lot of vendors come with their own cloud software these days. Please, please, please reach out to ITD. We will work with you to ensure that that is happening in a secure manner, that you're getting what you want. I think this is one of the biggest things that we've been helping people with lately is they'll set up a contract and it doesn't get the service they want because they didn't know what to ask for. So we can help you make sure that the things in the contract, the agreement with the vendor is getting you the services, the features, the capabilities, all those things, including the security that comes with working with vendors.
Wonderful, thank you. The next question was, across the presentations, it would be good to know what the common functionalities are of these tools and applications, and more importantly, what is the unique functionality? I think, we've covered sort of a lot of overlap in how, the development of these systems have influenced each other, but I might encourage you to kind of project what, I know you had next steps, but sort of what are the functionality goals for expanding, getting into forecasting, or if there are any other unique functionalities y'all want to highlight.
Well, I personally was taking furious notes while Gary was presenting, so I appreciate his presentation. A lot of great ideas out there, a lot of good use of overlaying data to kind of marry up, possibilities there. It's a good question. I think one of the things is just contextual data for unique events. So if you have a sensor, here is the complete graph of what the rainfall rates have looked like, and projected flooding and things like that. Then looking back at historical data for redesigning from an engineering perspective, how can we add, wetland or other environmental factors that can help prevent flooding in the future or redesign bridges, things like that. So historical data for alerting locations, more context for real time. Obviously that we've done the past, present, now we're looking at forecasting and future, things like that. So those are sort of the easy ones that we're seeing. But I mean, like Gary showed, a lot of great ideas out there.
Yeah, David, something else besides the forecasting that we were talking about earlier?
Yes, so Texas has a system like North Carolina. It's called the Flood Decision Support Toolbox, and it's maintained by the U.S. Geological Survey, and it has 150 or so gauges and maps So the presentation that was made about North Carolina focused on the gauges and on the area around the gauges, and we have an indigenous system for Texas that is like that also. Our partner in the FAST project is the U.S. Geological Survey. So what we tried to do on the academic side with the FAST project is to cover all the rest, right? Not just around the gauges, but all the rest of the state. And we succeeded in doing that. So going forward, what we need to do is to integrate what the FAST system does, which provides higher quality, more specific forecasting at particular locations, and then have the National Water Model forecast for all the rest of the state. We'd like to include your rainfall too, to get a kind of grand kumbaya, you know, that everything comes together in a single connected system.
And Gary, do you have any next steps for your system that we might be interested here in Texas?
Just to add, as more data layers become available, to add those to help inform the users. And we're currently partnering with North Carolina Department of Transportation to look, and they're currently installing new gauges after an event like Helena and just had Chantel, to see where we need to add gauges to get more coverage in our state, and then continue to work with the National Weather Service to add more forecast sites here in North Carolina.
All right, I think we have time for one more question in the room. Yes, sir. We're bringing the mic.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for the great presentations. I think Dr. Mayman, you made a great presentation on how to, translate a kind of a weather forecast, rainfall to inundation, considering a lot of these models. I think the purpose of here is emergency management. So that is especially useful for emergency preparation. For the emergency response, definitely the flood warning, what's actually happened in the road, that's definitely helpful. I just was curious, I know in the future you guys gonna add the forecasting feature on there. That's definitely help. So was there any consideration to, kind of harmonizing these, the benefits from both efforts and provide a, kind of a support for emergency preparation plus emergency response?
I've spent the last 10 years of my life trying to improve emergency response. I'm being sincere in that. I started this work in 14, and we're at 25 now. I'm 11 years in. So this is a tremendous personal effort, and we've got a whole team that's been working on this. And the goal always, every day, emergency response, better emergency response, right? How can we help the maintenance staff do better emergency response, make better decisions more quickly, save lives? I mean, what we had in July was just an utter tragedy, and many lives could have been saved with timely flood warning, and not just that flood, but many others as well. So, yeah, we're all about emergency response, right? This is our one goal.
I think one thing that we've seen across a number of different systems, even outside of flood warning, is that we have historically been very reactive, right, to things as they come up. We are working really hard to become much more efficient at being reactive right now, because that's the low-hanging fruit. But the proactive side is absolutely where we're moving to. And I think the forecasting feature, once we're able to spend the time and effort to get that into the system, is something that we're very interested in. We just see a very easy, high benefit, low-hanging fruit coming from what we're currently implementing across the state.
Wonderful. As we wrap up today, I just wanted to point out, I heard a lot of different things about partnerships is key. Obviously, even just the notes you were taking from North Carolina, the two of you nodding and looking at each other. I think there's still work to be done. We're in a great location, right? We've been doing a lot in the area for many, many years, but there's still work to be done. And that includes partnerships across the state of Texas and learning from partners outside of Texas. So we thank Gary for joining us today from North Carolina, and we thank David and Robin for presenting. So if you'll help me with giving them a round of applause. We are going to take a quick 15-minute break. I will point out there is coffee and water in the back of the room, and we will start promptly at 10:45. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Just a quick reminder. Hello, everyone. Just as a quick reminder, if you have not checked in, please sign in with Kelly in the back. We'll be back shortly. Thank you. Hello, everyone. If we can start taking our seats, please. We'll start preparing for the next panel. Thank you. Hello, everyone. If we can start taking our seats, please. Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed the howdy from our Director of Disaster Recovery Communications from the GLO. She will provide a presentation regarding disaster preparedness for us. Brittany Eck.
Thank you. This looks like a crowd that might have a few Aggies in it. So usually when we're at Texas A&M University, you get a big old howdy. That really just means shut up and, we're about to start. So yes, my name is Brittany Eck. I'm the Director of Communications for Disaster Recovery at the Texas General Land Office. One of our core functions at the GLO is long-term disaster recovery. That is helping rebuild our primary disaster that we've received the most funding for in the last few years has been Hurricane Harvey. We've received $5.676 billion to rebuild homes, apartments, and to basically restore folks' lives. We also received infrastructure funding. They call it mitigation funding to help prepare communities for the future. One of the missions, though, that we received after Hurricane Harvey was to also help folks be prepared. I know in this front row. Sorry. Oh, did our break do? Well, I'll go ahead and keep talking. Great. Awesome. So at the Texas General Land Office, we help folks recover, but we also help them prepare. 5 ways to prepare. You know, our main disaster in the state of Texas that does the most damage is hurricanes. I will say, though, financially, hail has surpassed flooding as the most expensive disaster to recover from. But flooding and hurricanes do tend to be the ones that get the most news in Texas and also result in the most property damage. So in order to be prepared for hurricanes, there are a variety of different things. I know folks in this audience probably are high information folks. You understand this stuff. You've heard this all before. But one of the things that I'd like to talk to folks about is the people in your family, the people and pets in your family that are not exactly always able to prepare themselves. Think about your elderly mother. Does she know exactly every medication she's on and the dosage? If you had to leave Houston and go to a different city, would they be able to go to the doctor and say, I had to leave my medications behind. I'm on XYZ. Here are my dosages. And also, if you do have that available, what if you do not have access to your phone? We recently did a exercise with preparedness with many different organizations. I know TxDOT was participating in this as well. But we talked about what happens if all the power goes out and you don't have access to cell towers, cloud systems, et cetera. How are you going to be able to communicate? How are you going to be able to communicate with other individuals? What is going to happen with your family? Do you know where to go? If all of a sudden you're told, let's go, do you have stuff that you need for the next 5 days? And do you have a place that your family knows you're going to go to? Have you communicated that amongst yourselves? So we want to talk a little bit about building a disaster evacuation kit. You want to think not only about yourself, clothes, whatever, but what about the kids? Do you have toys? Do you have poop bags for the dogs? What are you going to be on the road and need and might not be able to stop at Walmart because all the power's down? We do have this handy disaster evacuation kit at recovery.texas.gov/preparedness. That can help you think through the things that you might need. We also have these dry bags. These are document dry bags. I'm going to talk about them in a second, but they help you think about what paper you might need. What are those prescriptions? Do you have a written down record of what you might need as far as medications, ID, et cetera? Do you have this for all the members of your family? A really great tool that Texas A&M recently came out with is Buyers Aware. This is in certain counties that are really high flood and disaster prone. In this, you can actually go and look if you're searching for a house, if you're thinking about buying in this area, you can look and see what your risk is. If you already live in one of these areas and you want to know what the potential risks are, this can help you flood-proof your house. It can help you determine what risks you might have and how to mitigate some of those and potentially save you money on insurance and other things. Additionally, buying flood insurance. I know that you hear this so much. The amount of damage that can come from just 12 inches of water in your house is really significant. So if you are in an area that is high risk or high risk for wind, you want to have that insurance. You cannot buy it last minute. Both flood and wind have built-in mechanisms to prevent people from buying it when the storm is 5 minutes away from their house. So you want to buy that early. Flood-proofing your home. Here are some different ways that you can look. You can also go to our website, recovery.texas.gov/preparedness. We have a bunch of ideas on there about how to ensure your home is more resilient for the future, and make sure you're ready when that storm happens. Additionally, the family evacuation plan, we talked about this a second ago. Do you know where you'd go? Do you know how to get there? DriveTexas.org, which anyone who works for TxDOT is probably very familiar with that, is a fantastic website because it'll tell you if there's low water crossings, if there's traffic, if there's construction, all of those things. So you can map out your evacuation plan or getting around during bad weather. Because before you get on the road, you might need to make sure you can get to the destination that you're trying to go to. If anybody has any questions, this is my cell number and my email. I appreciate the time, and thank you, Rose, for and Rose is also showing these off. I'm going to leave some of these back here. If you have individuals who might be interested in doing a document and also the checklist, with having physical copies of things like prescriptions and identification, things you might need, also your insurance papers, because if you go back to a flooded out house, you may not know where that safe is, you may not know where your documents are, and they might be waterlogged. So having these available and already ready to go in your disaster go kit, really important. Thank you for your time.
Okay, moving into our second panel, we're going to go from forecasting and monitoring to flood response and recovery. So in the second panel, we're going to hear from leaders who've been on the front lines, accelerating, the reconstruction of bridges and streamlining data for both compliance and also planning and analysis. We're going to look at leveraging innovative technology and partnerships to accelerate search and rescue, and then pre-deployment of drones and emergency surveys. So, one of the things we've talked about in planning this session is, the critical resource in an emergency scenario is time. Let's see. There we go. In a time-sensitive situation, you want to use, all the people, all the processes, and all the technology you have to get information to decision makers in a timely manner, and get resources mobilized as quickly as possible. So each of our panelists brings a different perspective on how Texas is strengthening resilience in response to these kinds of flood disasters. And I'm going to go ahead and first call up Omar DeLeon and Kyle Russell, Austin District Director of Maintenance. Sorry, y'all, I can't speak this morning. And the Texas Georgetown Area Office Engineer.
All right, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Julie. Appreciate it. Really good to be here with everyone, and thanks to all those that are in the room and also joining virtually. So as Julie talked about, we really wanted to emphasize, the speed and efficiency that we did with our bridge replacement of Cow Creek at RM 1431. So to do that, I've got a quick presentation I'm going to cover, and then Kyle will cover some more of the details. But really, just to kind of set the stage, everything we did with precision and accuracy, right? We needed both, right? We needed to be right. We needed to be quick. And again, this, the story we have to tell at Cow Creek, I think really lends itself to that. So I think everybody's familiar, July 4th, everybody was looking forward to a good 3-day weekend with family and friends across Central Texas. Obviously, that changed pretty quick. July 4th, we were actually already working. We had impacts in Mason County, but nothing really devastational, right? So July 4th was a good day in the sense that we were receiving rainfall. Crews were responding. We were monitoring the weather, in contact with the state EOC and our TxDOT EOC as needed, right? So we were doing the things we needed to do. But again, all that changed pretty quick the morning of July 5th. So I got a call 4:44 in the morning from the Burnett County maintenance supervisor advising me of how bad things had gotten in Burnett County overnight. Little did I know that was just the beginning of the saga, right? So everything happened pretty quick for us. So on the screen, you'll see an image of Cow Creek, and I was sharing the story the other day, and really just the amount of devastation we had at this structure was just, I'd never seen anything like it in my career. I've been fortunate enough to work in 2 coastal districts and now here in Central Texas, and again, it was really impactful. And so the reason that was impactful to really a level we hadn't seen was the amount of rainfall we received in the Cow Creek watershed. So 12.34 inches in 24 hours with the rolling terrain, and really just kind of, if you think about the beauty of the hill country, once you get west of Lago Vista heading towards Marble Falls on RN 1431, that's a beautiful roadway, very scenic, 2-lane roadway, rolling terrain, vertical, horizontal. It's just, if you're looking for a good Sunday drive after church, this is a good roadway. But again, that beauty also gives us the challenges that we encountered here at this location. So over 12 inches of rain in 24 hours, really just unprecedented and really hard to envision what that amount of rain will do in a unique watershed like that. So just to kind of give a little bit of overview and again, just that was the rainfall received in that one watershed. If you look at the rest of the watersheds, I don't have that data with me, but there's a lot of damage in our district, and so much that we had 5 counties impacted: Mason, Llano, Burnett, Williamson, and Travis County, of course. 33 locations were damaged, about $12 million worth of damages that included roadway, bridge, and debris. But obviously the most notable is RN 1431 at Cow Creek, and on the screen is actually an image shortly after. I think this might have been Sunday, once we had some barrier placed out there, and really, but you can see the amount of debris still on the embankment. I'm going to just show a quick video. I think videos really help do it justice. Again, this was a 6-span bridge. All of the spans were completely demolished. This is start of the cleanup shortly after, but you can just see the amount of devastation between the bridge and the debris, and so much so that one of the spans, if you looked at the right-of-way, you looked at the channel, just completely gone. So I'm going to turn it over to Kyle here shortly, but I wanted to focus at the bottom, just our start work timeline from letting. Everybody's pretty familiar with our normal letting process. Once you have designs, design and a plan set ready to go, if you're doing a normal routine maintenance contract, say we turn in that plan set today, we're really, and then it lets, say we turn in today, then we go through the letting process. From letting to actually starting construction is about 3 months. But what we did here to help with the time is focus on the available contract resources we have with the emergency maintenance contract. So from when we let that contract, we were able to start work in 3 days, right? So that's a key difference, being very strategic. Again, talked about precision and accuracy. We needed to move fast, and using that emergency maintenance contract really gave us the speed we needed to get out in the field. So Kyle, I'm going to turn it over to Kyle. He's going to talk about some other decision points. There he goes.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Omar. So as Omar mentioned, the weekend of July 4th, we had mobilized and were working various locations in response. But then as soon as Monday, July 7th, we had basically a pre-bid Q&A meeting with all the prospective bidders, contractors on site, while we had a demo contractor that was removing the debris. And so that allowed us to walk around with the contractors, answer any questions, and let them, get a lay of the land, so to speak. Also had all our district subject matter experts on site from our bridge team and our design crew that were going to help us expedite the design. So we obviously, working with FHWA, we had to go back with an in-kind replacement on the bridge. But as Omar mentioned, the area, beautiful area, but unfortunately the topography and terrain is very challenging. So this was, RN 1431 was a key arterial between Lago Vista and Marble Falls. So speed was really the key here. Get it done fast, obviously, safe and per spec. But so our district design team worked with us really closely to get the design turned around very quickly and able to give us the opportunity to award a bidder to go out and mobilize quickly on it. So this key thing here, this kind of turned into a de facto design build project pretty quick. In my probably biased opinion, Texas has top-notch precast beam suppliers as well as historically great bridge standards. So we were able to utilize those, hit the ground running. The other fortunate aspect that we had for us was another neighbor district, the Yoakum district, had already some beams cast for one of their projects. So we were able to grab those from the Yoakum district and not wait in line to get those cast and mobilized out. So huge thanks there to our neighboring district. So from there, we put our construction team from the area office on it. The other key element here, as per the engineer, so with how critical it was to get this corridor open, we had to really, push down the decision-making level to some of my staff that I have a lot of trust in the field. So a lot of times, construction is construction. There's going to be challenges that pop up. We had to be able to make decisions to keep the job rolling, that day or within the hour. Next slide here, just kind of a quick comparison between the original bridge in 1960 and the new bridge. Biggest thing there is, the width. We raised the freeboard elevation a little bit, but with the in-kind, it was pretty similar, a little wider to meet our current standards with shoulder width and lane width. 3 80-foot spans, and I think we used TX34 girders for those that were interested in that. Just a real quick timeline, not sure how we're doing on time, but here's a rundown. So July 5th was when the bridge was unfortunately washed away early in the morning. July 8th, site cleanup began. 14th, bridge design was completed. So if you look at that turnaround, it's pretty remarkable there from our designers. EMC bid packages sent to contractors. Bid opening, low bid contractor was selected. And then we had a fully executed EMC on the 18th. Contractor mobilized July 19th, started work on the 21st, and then opened it to traffic on August 19th. So give or take about 30 days, we had built a brand new bridge. So here's, I think, another video should be playing. And so this was from our drone district survey team, some drones that they were flying throughout the project. Turn it back over to Omar.
Yeah, we'll close out, but just again, this is a video of the beam setting on August 5th. And again, as Kyle mentioned, thank you to the Yoakum District for providing these beams. It really helped get us to completion. The deck was poured on August 12th, but really more importantly, and what I think was pretty phenomenal was the ribbon cutting on August 19th. So this was a big day. The governor came to visit us, and Executive Director Mark Williams was with us as well. But you could really just get the sense of appreciation for the construction staff that did this, along with the TxDOT staff. All of us were invited to attend. You can see everybody there on the bridge deck. But lastly, there was a fire chief from Marble Falls that did pass away responding to someone that had been washed away at Cow Creek upstream. And so we invited them to attend and be the first vehicles that drove over Cow Creek when it was open. So again, that was a good way to remember their friend, and really just help to speak about the importance of this critical connection. But Julie, we'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, y'all. Oh, yeah, you're good. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. I want to magnify some of what you said. I know we talked a lot about, innovation as, more than just technology. And I think that kind of agility and procurement, having a contracting mechanism like that, knowing how to use it and mobilizing it for such speed is not something that's widely available in other sort of domains. So I think that, and then, we talked about knowing what assets were available through other projects and being able to, select plan sets like that. So I know we talked about there not being a ton of technology involved in the bridge repair, but the innovation piece really is there. And I'm grateful to y'all for highlighting that. Next up, we've got Joshua Todd, who's going to speak to us from the Texas A&M Task Force about some of the technology innovation and partnerships in search and rescue.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all for having me today. I'm going to give you a quick overview, and I apologize I don't have any slides. My data set was a little hard to anonymize and scrub for public distribution. A quick overview of what Texas A&M Task Force 1 is. We have 3 urban search and rescue teams in the state. Previously, we had 2. The legislature gave us a 3rd one down in the Rio Grande Valley. That's Texas Task Force 3. Texas Task Force 2 is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and Texas A&M Task Force 1 is obviously out of College Station. All 3 of those teams are managed under TEACS in the Texas A&M University system. The program consists of urban search and rescue, which is what you traditionally think of for earthquake response, tornadoes, hurricanes, things like that. And we leverage that team for wide area search and rescue, flooding, swift water, all the other things. The program also has 2 other primary components that we don't talk about as much. One of those is a very robust swiftwater rescue program with swiftwater rescue boat squads positioned around the state. We have about 30 to 40 of those boat squads at any given time. We will pre-position those assets if we know that flooding's coming. We also have a large component, which is the helicopter search and rescue technician program, which is a partnership with Texas Military Department and our colleagues at Department of Public Safety and Parks and Wildlife Game Wardens. We will staff other agencies' helicopters with our search and rescue swimmers for rescue. My function on this recent flooding was I was the deputy branch director for search and rescue for the state. At its maximum point, we had about 2,000 search and rescue responders from around the nation as we brought in other teams from around the country. Texas A&M Task Force 1 is one of 28 urban search and rescue teams in the country. I will tell you, this sounds very arrogant. We are the best in the country. That is objective, and that's primarily 2 benefits that we have that a lot of the other country doesn't. We get a lot more experience than anybody else does. I'm pretty junior in the program still, with about 15 years on, and this is my 14th presidential disaster declaration that I've had the opportunity to work. Some of the guys that have been on the team for 25, 30 years have just a massive amount of experience. The other benefit that we have is we draw from 60 different host agencies around the state. So we recruit statewide, a total of 600 members approximately around the nation. Most other teams are hamstrung by being within one specific fire department or one specific agency, so they don't have the breadth of people to pull from. So we have some really unique opportunities in the state that help us push boundaries and do some really awesome things. Quick overview of our efforts in the flood. Obviously, July 4th, we had some swiftwater rescue boat squads pre-positioned. Y'all have certainly heard about later on the 4th, we lost a fire chief, unfortunately, in the Travis County area due to that flooding. What's less well known is we had several near misses where we nearly lost rescuers down in the Kerrville area. We had one specific Texas Task Force 1 boat squad that got trapped by the topography and got swept away in their 2 vehicles and had to self-extricate in one of their rescue boats. And it was a pretty close call. So my hat's off to the outstanding men and women that I get to work with. They do some really, really impressive things. Specific to the Kerrville area of operations that we were in, we had 125 miles of riverfront that we needed to search from the headwaters where the damage really started all the way down to Canyon Lake. We had extensive debris problems that entire area, and we broke it down into approximately 10-mile chunks, what we refer to as divisions, and then methodically search those. We had an immense amount of help from our partners at the Department of Public Safety and the game wardens to help search those areas, and they covered all 125 miles within 3 to 4 days. Just an immense search effort. They did a fantastic job, and we're very grateful for that. This was a unique incident in The technology aspect, this will not shock y'all probably. I'm a bit of a nerd. We got to play with some really cool toys that we don't typically have available to us. We had almost any Department of Defense asset that we could have asked for. We had our partners at NASA come out with a WB-57 and fly some experimental payloads for synthetic aperture radar to help us define the extent of the problem and some of the flooding. We had some really, really unique sonar packages. So this was the largest scale underwater search and rescue operation that any of us are aware of. We've talked to our national colleagues. Nobody really can think of an incident where we did more underwater searching for decedents than on this incident. If you can think, most of the 125 miles still had water present. None of this really ran all the way out. That certainly required dive teams, but we brought in some really, really unique sonar payloads, some experimental Navy sonar technology with pan, tilt, rotate functions to where you could take in essence, a very souped up sonar and look at an object, and it had sufficient clarity for almost facial recognition and really understanding what those things are. If you've ever been a fisherman or dealt with side scan radar, a lot of those are fairly low fidelity, low resolution. Some of these packages were in essence in excess of $1 million and stuff that we typically don't get to play with. So from the sensor aspect, we had airborne assets, underwater assets, and ground-based assets with ground penetrating radar and some other things that I have not previously gotten to utilize and experiment with that. Some of that required a little trial and error because we don't necessarily understand the fidelity of those sensors and how best to apply those. So some of this we were leveraging past experience and in some ways making it up as we go to apply those new sensor technologies to what we were doing. So some really, really outstanding partnerships with our DoD and federal partners and private sector partners. One success that I want to talk about statewide that is partly a tool for us, but it's also a tool for the medical community. And you'll hear me bounce around a little bit. I'm a firefighter, I'm a paramedic, I'm a cop, so I can translate across the disciplines a little bit. We've been able to leverage some stuff at the state level that came out of COVID. One of those tools is called Pulsera. You may have heard of it, you probably haven't. So if you think about one of your family members gets in a motorcycle wreck and they get taken to a small rural hospital. They're a trauma patient, they get put in that trauma registry as a patient. They need a higher level of care. So they get taken from that hospital and they go over to another one and they receive trauma care at that hospital. Now they're put into a trauma registry there. So now I've got what looks like on paper 2 trauma patients. They go to a nursing home or a rehab facility, and I get 4 of these motorcycle accident patients. That was one of the challenges that the state wanted to tackle right before COVID really got into full swing. The answer to that is every out-of-hospital medical patient in the state of Texas now receives an EMS wristband if they have an encounter with EMS. That gives them a unique barcoded serial number that can track them through all their echelons of care. And so we're able to show that this was one patient that was encountered at multiple facilities by multiple agencies. Extrapolating that out, during COVID, Department of State Health Services did something really, really forward thinking, which is they purchased a statewide software application on your phone called Pulsera. And its claim to fame is I can scan that wristband, the next EMS provider that comes behind me can scan it and have access to all that patient's data. When they get to the receiving facility, the nurse in the ER can scan that wristband and suddenly that facility has access to everything everyone else did. So school bus rollover out near Bastrop, right? You've got children that are nonverbal, special needs, and we need to marry them up with their families. I can now scan them and show photos of them, and that can carry on. That capability became critical in this setting because we had over 100 decedents to track and people that were rescued. So as these rescue boats go out and collect that person, from an area where they were flooded and take them to what we call lily pad and drop them off. We're able to wristband and tag and scan that person and track that individual throughout the state of Texas as they move to various echelons of care. One last thing in closing, so I'm running out of time. One of our biggest challenges is we do an immense amount of coordination in a multidisciplinary manner before the incident. So our cops work great with our firefighters work great with EMS. Everyone works good with emergency management. We have a unique challenge that most of those disciplines are in some manner beholden to software applications and things that the federal government chooses for us, right? The USAR community operates in the Esri ecosystem. The fire community operates in a different instance of the Esri ecosystem. Our law enforcement colleagues live in an ecosystem called TAC. The biggest challenge for us as first responders in the state of Texas is the data aggregation and data integration piece to take those various best-in-class technology platforms and link them together. We had a very unique opportunity with our partners at the Department of Public Safety to leverage a platform from a vendor called Palantir on this incident, where we were able to ingest all the data from the various instances of Esri, from TAC, from all these different sensor platforms, and aggregate that raw information and turn it into actionable intelligence. And that was a true game changer, something we've never been able to do in the past, and definitely something we need to continue forward. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I think your closing thought about data aggregation and integration is probably common across a lot of our efforts at innovation and technology. I'm going to welcome Matthew Heinze from the maintenance support section to talk to us about, gosh, I know, lots of different technologies in partnership and innovation. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Julie. So Matthew Heinze with our maintenance division here at TxDOT, 21 years with the agency. I'm one of those guys that started in the field, so I've experienced a lot of the stuff that y'all have already heard from the field side. The last 4 years, I have been the emergency management coordinator for TxDOT covering statewide emergencies. So some of the items I want to visit with y'all about today is the technology that we've used. So you've heard some really great stories, and Rose mentioned about the Team Texas, right? So it's not just TxDOT, it's also our other partners out there. As Joshua just mentioned, there was involvement with TxDOT on some of that search and rescue and getting some of that stuff set up, and that coordination down at the State Operations Center with all of our other partners that are down there as well. Omar and Kyle talking about the Cow Creek situation and just that flooding going on. Those contractor partners, we also had a big presence with our contractors during the debris pickup throughout this event. So bringing everybody onto one page can get really difficult and confusing, especially whenever we start looking at that back end for that reimbursement from the from the feds, and then also our state partners just tracking that and helping to get that state declaration or presidential declaration for our damage. So one of the tools we use for that is VOCI. Another tool I'm going to talk to you all about is the TxEra app, which is our Texas Emergency Response app. That is an internal for maintenance managers within the agency. StreamFlow, y'all already heard about that. Rosemarie and Dr. Maidment did an excellent presentation on that. That's been a huge tool, and we're really excited for that next step with FAST that we can roll out. And then I'm going to do a little radio demonstration. We have a lot of partners in that field that we work with on that Team Texas too, so I want to demonstrate some of that technology for y'all. So I mentioned the VOCI. That is an off-the-shelf product. It started in our FAR district. They picked it up several years ago for tracking hurricane and emergency response and had some really good field experience with it. It came to maintenance division. It kind of got set on a shelf. Sometimes technology does that because we're not fully sure how to implement it out into the rest of the state. Sat there for a little while. We got an opportunity to look at it again, and we're very fortunate that we got to push that out statewide. And our partners with VOCI have been an outstanding partner to very much customize it for us, and it really helps us. So we're getting situational reports. So Omar, for example, is getting reports from his maintenance sections in the district. They're putting it into this platform. Then he will take that information and then he pushes it up to the state level. And we're getting that from 25 districts. So then we can combine that information. That information is then shared with our TxDOT leadership and also the governor's office. And then our other state agency partners also, we're providing that information to give them some real time what TxDOT's response is, current needs or anything like that. We have our schedule in there for the EOCs at the district. Again, that's really critical that we know who to call. Omar mentioned that 4 o'clock call. So on July 3rd, I started my shift at 7 p.m. down at the State Operations Center. So I was the overnight shift during all of this whenever it started happening on July 4th. And so it was really critical to know who to call at that time and not wake somebody up, or I get just a voicemail and then who's the next person to call. So the districts keep that up to date for each event in the platform. State of Texas assistance request, that offer of help that we get asked for from other state agencies, or if we're needing to ask for assistance, is tracked in another system known as WebEOC with the Division of Emergency Management. Our system for tracking that is in VOCI, and we put those details in there. The district can add, or the division can add any notes that they want to keep that updated, and then we pass that information through the State Operations Center. The real critical thing is those after action reports after the event. So we're collecting it in there. Those maintenance section supervisors can go in there at the start of that event, and they can start collecting that information right away, because you don't, at the beginning of the event, you may forget some of those things by the time you get to the end of the event. So they're collecting that real time as they experience those deals for any of that. So on the TxEra, the Texas Emergency Response app, I'm going to try to get my laser pointer here to kind of help demonstrate this. So this was the event that Omar spoke about for the Cow Creek. It was July 5th, excuse me, that this was some of the response that was going on. So Austin is this area over here, San Antonio's down here, Kerrville area is right in here. This is Junction area on Interstate 10. Mason is right here. This would be kind of roughly where the Cow Creek area is at. So what you're seeing on this map is an overlay from our weather provider. And then these small objects here, that's our TxDOT vehicles. We're using from our fleet operations, we're getting that geo tracking so we can have it on there. It's real time. They move across the map. We've got this road closed symbol here, and then some of the light blue is water over the road. That's information being pulled in from Drive Texas, our public-facing website. There are a lot of other layers, 21 of them exactly, that we can pull that data and put on there. So this was something that was developed out of the Amarillo district several years ago for winter weather response. In an EOC, if y'all are familiar with that, you may have 10 TV screens, computer screens that you're looking at different information. You got to go to this, or maybe you're just using your laptop and you have to keep toggling back and forth. So the Amarillo district, and a great idea, said, hey, why can't this all be on one map? So that's how we developed TxEra. They started it, then it came to the state level, and we said, hey, this is beneficial across the whole state. So this is something that's available to maintenance managers to be able to track that. It's also got our traffic division, the traffic cameras that they've all combined into one platform now, so you can see that. The stream flow information is on there as well. Our DMS board. So this is another view of it. This is actually on July 4th. You can kind of see there the big rain cell that was sitting over the hill country. There was other rain that had happened out in far west Texas and up in the Panhandle, Southern Plains and Lubbock there. So you're seeing that. That is the screen that those maintenance supervisors would be seeing. On the right-hand side there, that's the traffic camera. There's a list you can select from. It's you can zoom in and out to see stuff. On the left-hand side, the top box there is giving you that HCRS data where you can see what's going on. You can also see what the DMS sign is posting. So if the district needs to make sure and double check, hey, is that working? Instead of logging into another system, they can do a real quick look at it on this. So Dr. Maidment mentioned a really good presentation on a stream flow in the FAST system that's going to be going out to the districts here very shortly. So this has been a multi-year project that we've worked on in collecting data from those districts. And this right here is the combination of all of that in one platform. This will be something that will eventually make it. We have currently some of the stream flow information on Texera. This will eventually be on there as well. So they'll get those notifications from the colored dot on, is this road going to flood or not? So just kind of wanted to give y'all a sense of that. So my last thing I want to do is give a little demonstration on our radio system. So TxDOT operates a VHF 7 and 800 and also a trunk system in combination with a lot of partners. Our biggest one being the Department of Public Safety and Texas Parks and Wildlife. And then we've got several system owners that we're partners with, and then even partnering with county and city officials on their radio system. So real quick, I'm going to do a radio check. Of course, it's not going to work for me because I'm that guy. This is TxDOT EMC Matthew Heinze for a radio check.
This is statewide radio coordinator Gordon Harkey. I'm speaking to you from Lampasas County.
Leanne Heine, ESF1 State Operations Center.
And to add to that, if y'all are familiar with where the State Operations Center is,
Richmond statewide radio coordinator, Belton, Texas.
It's 3 floors below ground at DPS headquarters.
Check, Corpus Christi, Rick, loud and clear.
Mike Hardwick, statewide radio coordinator, Austin EOC.
So Mike is actually on 1 floor below us in our EOC.
Statewide radio coordinator at 973 campus.
That's just a few miles away up on the toll road near Tesla.
This is statewide radio coordinator, Francisco Garcia, San Antonio.
Maybe all of them.
This is Lewis Harris, Beaumont District Coordinator, radio coordinator, Jefferson County.
So far southeast Texas with that one. All received loud and clear, thank you. So real quick demonstration there. This radio is using LTE, but it's also multi-band with the VHF 7 and 800. So a lot of technology there. It is a little bit expensive, and that's been one of our challenges, but there are lesser models that we're purchasing, and then these we're getting going to be pushing out to some of our districts for key personnel to have that, because during those emergencies, that communication, this is 100-year-old technology, right? Radios have been around forever, but having that link whenever we look at cell phones having issues and stuff, this is what we're using. So there, real quick on the map, that is the TxDOT radio towers. The color coding is our regions of our radio system that those gentlemen cover. So I greatly appreciate y'all's time very much, and thank y'all.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Yeah, we talked a lot about, time being of the essence, but also communication failures being the #1 risk. So having the protocols to, demonstrate, to coordinate those things and validate them, and also the centralization of the VOC for so many different purposes, having folks on the ground be able to tie directly into that is so essential to what you were saying about, being able to declare a state of emergency. So thank you. That was really valuable. Okay, next up, we have William Graffis, TxDOT's Emerging Aviation Technology Coordinator, who's going to talk to us about drones.
Thank you.
She said, take my time. So we'll do a couple of hours on drones. This is the fun stuff. So my name is William Graffis. I'm the Emerging Aviation Technology Coordinator here at TxDOT. I work under Sergio Roman, who's my section director. We were under Flight Services over at Austin International. Now we have our own section. And the big thing that we're focused on, not only for the flood stuff, but for most of our TxDOT operations, is our uncrewed aircraft system. So before I touch on what we did for emergency response, just a quick overview of the program. And for TxDOT personnel in the room, it's a recruiting drive. So picture there on the right, that's all three of our aircraft types. I have our main two ones that are here. So that little one up front, this is our Skydio X10. So this is fully cellular capable. We could fly this remote anywhere in the state. Currently, under the initial aviation program, we have 35 of these aircraft that are out. So every district has one, and then 10 divisions have them as well. And that was just kind of based off whichever had signed up for pilot training programs. And then our big one, this is our Trinity Pro. So we do this one, you're going to think this is more afterwards. We're doing large scale mapping, LiDAR missions as well with that one. Right now we have 5 for the state. Aviation bought 3, and then based off demos, Corpus Christi and Lubbock have each purchased their own. So I don't have to share as many aircraft with that. The other one that I don't have with me is one of our bigger quadcopters, the Whisper Ranger Pro. It's that black one on the top left. Flies like the smaller one, but meant to do kind of what the bigger one does. That's going to be for high-grade photogrammetry in smaller areas. So just a quick overview in our program. We started in May of 2022 and had our first graduating class 8 weeks later with Sergio in it. Is it not shown? Or am I a slide behind? Okay, no, I mean, I'm good. So we had our first pilots in June of 2022. Right now we're at 152 pilots across the state. We do 6 training sessions a year. We have a group down in Kyle, Texas with our training partners at Austin Community College Public Safety Training Center, more acronyms. So we have a 10-person class. They're 2 days into their training right now, so they'll graduate in 5 weeks. And again, we're adding 60 pilots per year. Currently 51 aircraft in the fleet. Every district has at least 1 aircraft and 1 pilot. And again, we're located, if you ever want to come find us, we're at the hangar over at Austin International. In addition to running all of our internal ops, we're also responsible. We have the policy letter from Mark Williams where we enforce to make sure that all of our contractors flying drones are following all the FAA standards. So that's making sure that their aircraft are registered, their pilots are licensed, and that they're following rules over the roadways to keep everybody safe. So the quick recruitment pitch, as always. So our training program, and this is the pilots that responded to the flooding events. The way TxDOT wanted to do this program is we have no dedicated drone pilots at TxDOT. Our idea with this was if we're doing a bridge inspection, we'd rather train a bridge inspector how to use a drone to accomplish that than have to send a pilot out there. Like when I first had to do bridge inspections, it immediately said, all right, I need a bridge inspector. I don't know what I'm doing. So that's kind of our goal for initial stuff. So if there's a use case for drones, we want people within those sections to be our pilots. So whether that's mapping, surveying, environmental, said it goes all over, and we found a lot of use cases with these aircraft. All that they have to do, if they have a use case, they get an approval form signed by their district engineer, their division director, and that's just to make sure that we have the backup to get them scheduled, as our training program is very intensive. We have a nationally recognized training program. We got to host a conference here at Stastny in March to showcase our partnership with ACC. Some of the other entities that we looked at might do like a 1 or 2 day training program. And since we started under Flight Services, under the chief pilot at TxDOT 2, we had a really big push. We want to have a very safe program. So we want to make sure our training program was very robust. So our training program, they do a 3-week online course to get them ready for the federal exam. They go take the federal exam, and then they go down to ACC, and they do 2 full weeks in person. So Monday through Friday, so like that group that's down there for their week 1, they're doing about half classroom learning and about half flying. So they get a training drone. They'll take that back to their home district, fly for about 4 weeks, come back for their final week. And the idea that we want with that is that we feel very comfortable and safe with our pilots operating. Part of that too is our instructors there, very knowledgeable. They also do a lot of search and rescue work. So one of the specific tie-in things for this is during their final week, they do a practice search and rescue mission as part of their training. So it's 2 pilots together. They're coordinators. They're going to hide debris, all sorts of stuff over the campus. And those pilots not only have to do mission planning, but go out and fly that mapping mission, make sure they come up with a way to showcase their data and walk rescuers onto what they found, and then present it to the instructors and get graded. So getting comfortable doing that whole process. In addition, we have continuing education with ACC, and the one specific class that we have in there is we have an emergency management class that was built specifically for TxDOT. And so all of our pilots, that's not a mandatory course. Once they graduate from initial training, they're allowed to go take that. And as part of that, they take a couple different courses through FEMA and NIMS online. And again, we're just trying to build our certification so that we're ready if we're called upon. So I did kind of the quick overview on our fleet. I got ahead of myself. I got excited because the aircraft are out there. So for the SkyDO, our small one, what we currently have, magic, it's coming. So what we currently have is through the SkyDO cloud. This is a manufacturer specific. I'll go back, see if it pulls. But that aircraft, we can live stream anywhere across the state. So right now, if I pulled up that dashboard, any current aircraft that we're flying, we could view their live stream, or I could fly them from my computer. So that gives us a lot of functionality. But for the initial training, when we received those aircraft, we did our initial training in 2024, and we had a flood event in the Corpus district. Their pilot was one of the first ones to get trained and had the aircraft. We did training at Stastny on a Monday, Tuesday. They were down responding to that flood event with that aircraft, and we were live streaming that, and we were sharing that as far as we could within TxDOT, just to make sure that they're aware of that capability. So that's a full built-in one that we have as part of our fleet management system, so we can deploy those aircraft wherever we need them. So as was touched on, we did get to use drones quite a bit for some of the flooding at Cow Creek. So this is just a wrap showing the initial flight, which I think we did on July 8th with one of our aircraft, just getting the overview, and then a final overhead shot middle of August after the bridge was completed. So just touching on what we use drones for, again, afterwards, we had, I think, 27 pilots and 15 aircraft that responded, and that's across San Angelo, Austin, and San Antonio district. Some of our initial response work was focused on using drones, but we already use them for TxDOT. So San Antonio, they were going out, checking bridges, checking roadways, performing the inspections. And that's some of the stuff that we have for our pilots. If it's within TxDOT, we don't need to wait for any other additional requests. The two specific STAR requests that we did one on Cow Creek using the fixed wing. So that's where we went and flew miles and miles and miles of that creek to give mapping to show what the flood levels were and what the damage was like. Very cool. Corpus Christi, who had one of our early adopter districts that bought their own, they sent 3 pilots in a vehicle up as well. And then they were able to assist. Myself and Sergio were flying half of it, but we flew several miles of that creek, and then we're able to use some of the emergency software we procured with Esri to do mapping and response with that. We also did, you heard Jared was one of our pilots that did the radio check. He is one of our drone pilots as well, and he was able to use this aircraft to go do radio tower inspections to make sure those radio towers are still working. So that was a huge early use case for the drones. We had found that those inspections, if you have someone climb up there, do a helicopter, those can be $7,000 to $15,000 for the rough numbers we were given. And the drone does it. Like I said, these aircraft are expensive because they're fully made in America and compliant, but the aircraft will pay themselves one of those tower inspections. And then the one cool thing that I'll touch on too that we just got approved for that we're really excited about is we're looking at being able to integrate these aircraft for emergency response as part of a dock program. So the company makes that little aircraft. It can live in a weatherproof dock. And then the grant that we just got approved for, we're going to be putting those docks on the back of an EV vehicle, equipping with Starlink, and then we can park those in these high-risk areas and then fly those remotely. So now there's no personnel in the danger zone. As soon as weather clears, which we'll have weather information live from that dock, we'll be able to launch the aircraft, fly remotely from anywhere in the state, and do damage inspections. And that is everything. Again, otherwise I'll talk for hours on this stuff.
So much. Want to come up here?
Oh.
Thank you. We've got a few minutes for questions. I will defer to T3F members first. Yeah.
I have real simple. Weather and lighting.
Weather and what was the second part?
Lighting. Do it at night.
So for weather, a lot of it's going to come down to, it's usually around 30 miles an hour for wind. So clouds, we fully operate in visual line of sight. And you think if we can't really see that well, the sensors aren't going to see that well. So winds, they do pretty well in some of the higher winds as long as we still have visual line of sight for visual flight rules. For night, of course, I have it on that aircraft. That Skydio comes equipped. It will look like an alien spaceship. We have night sense LED lights that are on that aircraft that we can attach as modules. So that aircraft, the other cool thing, has full 360 obstacle avoidance to keep us from running into stuff. With those on there, we can fully fly at night. We're legal to fly at night. It also gives us enough light to see to do hasty visual inspections as well. So pretty weather capable as long as we can see.
On the bridge replacement, that was a pretty inventive and adaptive method to use the existing beams from another district. Is it an already existing TxDOT standard or approach, or could it be that the beam, precast beams that we have used in TxDOT are of a standard length or construction type, or are there too many variables to allow for that normally?
So I think and Colin and I will both touch on this, but I think there's a good, healthy inventory of standard sizes, but there is some tailoring to fit specific bridge design needs, right? So it's a really good balance. So, and going back to the application of our TxDOT standards, kind of proven through the years and really just kind of designing to what we have. I think that's really embedded in our program, and it's just one of those things we do now that we may not even really realize it. But again, there is going to be some nuances with bridge design. Every creek's going to be a little bit different. Every span might be a little bit different, but there is a lot of kind of traditional set length and placement. But Kyle, you have anything on that one?
I think it's just the way that it worked out in this case. Everything is pretty much standardized, and that really does help our process. But it may not be a one size fits all, because you still got to think about that other job and the contractor schedule, and how we partner with the contractor. Was that on critical path, or were they doing other work and didn't need those beams at that time, and they could wait for them to be cast and delivered, that several months or however long it takes. So kind of a good tool that we have in our tool belt, but I don't know if we'll be able to just move forward with a SOP where we're going to cherry pick from other districts to help in certain situations. So
I guess unless it's for us, right? Yeah. Maybe.
So obviously your stream bed changed after the flood. So how did you get your LiDAR data to your designers really quickly?
So we have a pretty robust UAV team at our district survey group there at the Austin district. So they were flying it, but then they also had crews out there that were actually doing kind of some of the old school survey point acquisition with total station or whatever it is. So we kind of use both at our disposal.
I'm going to interject while we wait. I've got a question. I'm going to start with you, Matthew, but this really, I think, applies to all of you. But, with VOC or VOC and some of the other coordination tools, how much are these extensible to other types of disasters? We focused a lot on flooding today, but we all know that in emergency response, we've got lots of different types. So
yeah, absolutely. So great question. So yeah, the VOC tool, we're using that for, we've got a standing room for wildfire events. So we're tracking any of that support that we may provide to Texas A&M Forest Service. That's being tracked. We have one just for a monthly standing room that if a district has some type of internal emergency that's just in that district, they can put that information in there and we can track it. And then for the big events, we'll build a specific room such as the derecho or the hurricane barrel that we saw earlier. Those type of events will stand up a specific room, but otherwise it's always out there for the districts to utilize and divisions.
I'm going to ask Joshua to add on to that, but also I was curious, sort of, you talked a lot about how, part of your strength comes from the fact that you have participation from 60 different agencies. How does that show up sort of in your operations in terms of both, challenges and opportunities, having, drawing from different protocols and different, domains and perspectives?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question. So one of the reasons why I mentioned the different hats I wear, I'm fairly representative of actually a large portion of our workforce where people are members of different agencies and different disciplines. Pretty much everybody is wearing at least two hats. They're either fire and EMS or fire and police or EMS. There's so much crossover that has unique challenges for the state, right? When the task force picks up the phone, they have to be in front of the emergency medical task force in line or in front of TIFMAS, the fire response capability, because everybody in the state's drawing from the same pool of personnel. There's a lot of benefits to it. There's crosstalk, there's coordination that comes from it. There's that multidisciplinary mindset. There's access to different systems. I talked about one of our challenges is at the federal level, each discipline kind of picks a best-in-class solution for their discipline, and that trickles down to what we're required to use on the state level. So I have a login for a law enforcement application. I have a login for a fire application. That has unique challenges in that I have to go into multiple common operating pictures to try and build my own mental model of what a common picture is, because none of those disciplines by design cross over. I think it is a best practice to source for multiple disciplines and multiple agencies around the state, because it kind of goes back to iron sharpens iron, right? The more that we leverage diverse skill sets and experiences and unique training opportunities, the better we're going to be equipped for the multitude of response situations that we're going to see in the state. To your question of how does this apply to flooding versus other hazards, I think all of our agencies around the state, we can't be focused on one specific issue, because we've all seen that Texas is truly the most all hazard state in the nation, right? It's going to be wildfire or flooding or, heaven forbid, an earthquake someday. It's always something new and different. They have similar themes that traverse through them. But you will not find another state that has this breadth of challenges.
Well, I'm going to actually have you guys go down the line with one final question, recognizing that this is so all hazard and that you are all kind of involved in different facets. And so many people in this room take, what we hear from you to steer, RD&T work to figure out how do we mobilize technology more effectively. What is something that you would like that would have helped you, or, in the face of the next disaster, what is something that you're kind of aware of that you need, whether it's information, tools, staff, workforce skills? Is there anything that you're aware of that, come disaster N+1, that your, agency or office would benefit, or, your office would benefit from having access to faster or more? I'm gonna have you guys go down the line. William?
I would say for us, one of our big ones that we're pushing for, and again, that grant that we got for those EV vehicles might be a good start, is having vehicles that are capable to support what we need for the drones. So when we did the search and rescue in Kerrville a couple weeks after as part of the STAR request, having vehicles that just have the ability to charge the aircraft. And then one of the things when we're flying, if you see behind that aircraft, there's the little controller. It has about a 9-inch screen on it. So when you're doing inspections where you're looking at the data once you're back in the office, that's perfect enough. You can see what you need. But when we were doing some of the search and rescue aspects, that's where for us, we usually just take, one of our old TVs, have it plugged in to give you a better view on site. But so having a vehicle that can charge all the aircraft, and that's one of the things that we put in for like our after action that we're working on different funding plans for, having the TV capability, and then Starlink integration, just to give us, where we got lucky by the time we showed up, at least for that part, most of the cell service had been set back up again. So a lot of our capability to live stream and communicate wasn't as impaired as much. And then I think the only other thing for us that we found out, at least for the end of it for the search and rescue, is so for some of the more specific aspects, if there's human remains involved, it's seeing who within our current group of pilots is eligible to attend for that. So again, we currently have 152 active pilots at TxDOT. By the time the STAR request closed for us, I think we had 12 that met the criteria to respond to that. So figuring out if that criteria needs to change, if we need to add training to make more pilots eligible, or if just accepting that for depending on what is needed for the search and rescue, if that's not something that TxDOT wants to have our pilots participate in.
Yeah, and I think for me, I think about everything that the panel's talked about and really just the alignment of resources, right? So we're in a really good era where the awareness from the field is lining up with the available technology, and not just really for the EOC level, but the responding levels, right? So between the sections, area offices, the district office, some of the technology and initiatives and tools that we have that Matthew talked about, plus some of the drone programming, I think our success at Cow Creek and really with our response as a district all aligned because of that available technology, right? So, but it's also unique how then we relied on proven standards and really just kind of the bread and butter of our program. It's build a simple bridge in kind. So the standards being available, the available technology kind of married up together to align for this response. So the thing I have really, Julie, to your question is, this new technology is really good, right? We're always on the cutting edge. There's always something that's new, but just the balance between utilizing that technology to outpace what we can do in the field, right? I think this was just good all around alignment and timing. What we have as far as available technology aligned with the field. And I guess my only caveat is anybody that's working on next level initiative, please make sure you get the feedback from those that will utilize the technology, right? So the maintenance section staff, area office, district staff, that's extremely important because if we're 5-10 years ahead in technology and we can't meet that demand in the field, then we're really not there. So that would be my, I guess, request or ask.
Right. Kyle, forgive me. We got to go lightning round. One thing you need more of.
Okay, I'll just say something real quick that came to mind. Not really a new technology, but one of those days, I forgot which day it was, that Omar and I were running on fumes, and we started pulling out this phone's out of battery, laptop's out of battery, and Omar pulled out his iPad. Not really a new technology, but having that was critical. Cellular connected iPad, and then that way maybe some of these systems that we're hearing about today could be integrated in that for the field staff.
So I'm going to go a little old school. I think the technology is really great and it's emerging and we're going to see so much more of it and we're grabbing it and we're running with it, right? And I think that's great. I think one of the challenges I see from the EMC side is that unknown factor that we don't have any control over, and that is the human factor. And how do people respond to those warning messages? How do they respond to this information and that education? I think we do really great at TxDOT with our communications division and our travel division to get that information out there and working with our partners at the State Operations Center to get that unified message. This month was Preparedness, National Preparedness Month. We still have today. So if you haven't gone out and prepared, it doesn't mean it ends at the end of the month. So I think that's part of it, is that educating the public. I think we do really great, but trying to reach everybody can be difficult to where they understand the importance. Like Brittany mentioned earlier about all the stuff you need to have. It's simple stuff.
Yeah, don't forget your bags on your way out.
I'll give you two, but I'll keep them brief. One of them is we collectively are generating an immense amount of data and information out there. What we're not generating is actionable intel. We have to have platforms that aggregate the various common operating platforms and make it truly common and build a consistent picture of what's going on and what's needed. I think we're crazy as a state if we don't integrate in that. You've heard of VOG, WebEOC, all these different things. Each discipline has their own reasons for needing the tool they chose. We've got to be able to link them together. That's critical. The other thing I'll say, and I'll cover up this logo, you heard everything here today runs on LTE. My experience, whether it's Wimberley, Kerrville, Smokehouse Creek fire, Valley View tornadoes, doesn't matter. LTE does not work. When it's in the midst of the actual problem, that first 3 to 4 operational periods, LTE's down, and I've seen every iteration of Colt, Cal, CRD, whatever FirstNet's going to sell you, or Verizon or someone else. and tell you that they're going to bring you data. None of it works when it needs to happen. We have to have a number of fallback strategies, and one of those has to be satellite data backhaul.
Yeah, great. Well, another round of applause for our great second panel. Thank you so much.
All right, Rio, wrapping up the day. Real quickly, we just wanted to give some of our task force members that are present. Do y'all have any comments? Would you like a mic to kind of give us your reflections for the day?
Only reflection is I was actually doing some internet searches while some of you were speaking to see how much this is out there and publicized. I'm impressed with what the TxDOT folks have put together over time, et cetera. And encouraged is something I've said before in this task force is TxDOT needs to get the word out more about what they're doing. It's pretty cool stuff. It's impactful, and we need to make sure people, the citizens of the state understand the positive things that you all are doing.
Is it me now?
Do we have anyone online?
You got any comments?
My comment is that I think this morning has been incredibly informative and has helped draw a lot of connections on a number of projects that are occurring that they can work together and help move us forward. So I want to thank all the presenters for the information today. It's just been incredibly valuable to see TxDOT and other agencies' responses.
Well, I'll wrap it up. I agree. One, I recognize that this task force normally looks much further out at things, but this was a very pertinent discussion, as I said at the beginning. And very much appreciate both sets of panelists as well as the presentation on preparedness. I got my bag. So just really as was pointed out, the breadth of expertise, the amount of work that's been done, the willingness to identify, well, what else could we do? And that, if anything, in its relationship to this task force is going back and saying, okay, they said what else can be done. Some is technology related, some needs to be shared with others. And oftentimes, as Steve said, I always come out of this thinking, that was great. We need to get this in front of more people. One, we need to continue to make sure that TxDOT folks are tied in and others that are in this area tied into these task force meetings. But I always think, God, short courses a month from now or 2 weeks from now, whenever it is, and we could add a whole panel just like this at short course as well. So again, thanks for y'all's input. I've taken away a lot of lessons already. Really appreciate the amount of work done on both the identification and planning, some prediction side of it, and then you hear the people that are actually executing and the great work that they do with the tools that they're given. And I'll say, I turn to Steve. Doesn't just have to be satellite; it could be radio, right? We could go back to just radios at work. So there's always redundant communications, a key part of any operation, and I appreciate the amount of work that they have to do and the struggles that they go through in doing that. Thanks for Steve being here. I know a number couldn't, the task force members couldn't make it today. Thank you to TTI. If you didn't know, this was their first technology task force meeting in support of us. So I appreciate y'all's work today and to all the TxDOT staff that participated. And thanks to many senior TxDOT members that are here today. This is the first time we've had them here for quite, the whole day in quite a while. And Captain Luna, I see you over there too as well. So appreciate DPS being and joining us. And if I missed anybody, I just appreciate your interest and your returning to these meetings. So thank you.